I do have something that is not on the agenda. It's a point of personal privilege. One of our commissioners has really gone above and beyond to be able to listen to our stakeholders, particularly around the 5-year waterfowl season review. And Commissioner Wagner, if I may, we have given you a special award. And it is, I will read it because you guys can't read it from there, but it is the Wandering Duck Award, which I would like Commissioner Ray Wagner. In the spirit of Johnny Cash's song, I've been everywhere. He's been everywhere, man. He's been to St. Joe's waterfowl meeting through the Kansas City Mow Man. He's been to the Boot Hill for a waterfowl meeting in Portageville Mow Man. Perryville Mow to meet with a CWD team on his way home, man. Closer to home, he's been to waterfowl meetings in St. Charles and Ellsbury Mow Man. He's been through High Hill, Boonville, Minear, Bloomsdale, Winfield, and Oregon, man. Ray's has been everywhere, man. And sir, I would like to present this to you today.
Wow. This is funny. Of course, this is why I did that, so I might get an award. That's right.
I would like to thank Deputy Director Aaron Jeffries for his creativity as well as his passion for waterfowl hunting. So, with a bit of fun, now I would like to ask our director to present to us his update.
All right, well done, Ray. Thank you. I'll frame that.
Well, that is a bit of a tough act to follow, I must admit. But yeah, I will say, I know, speaking for the team, they all have very much enjoyed the opportunity to interact and engage with you, Ray, along your travels. And so really, really appreciate that. All right, it's been a busy start to February for many of the team. 2025 legislative season started January 8th, Governor Kehoe's inauguration on January 13th, with several of us were able to participate in. We'll hear more about that in a moment. State of the State address last week on January 27th. And Deputy Director Aaron Jeffries at the end will provide a much more detailed legislative update for you all, but things are in full swing. I'd like to give a shout out and a huge thank you to Jake Buxton for his work over the last 5 years as our legislative liaison. Jake has moved on to the Department of Natural Resources. We still bump into him occasionally. Oh, move the slides. Still bump into him occasionally. He's doing well over there, but certainly excited to welcome TJ Graven to our team as our new legislative liaison. TJ has hit the ground running. We have heard nothing but very, very positive things from our partners across the state, both inside the Capitol and outside the Capitol, about TJ's work. And so staff should certainly be prepared to get lots of questions from TJ in the same way that you got them from Jake in the past, and look forward to having TJ in that role. TJ came to us from the Department of Natural Resources, where he served as their legislative liaison for the last 4 years. So very, very, very excited about that addition. The 2024 elk and deer hunting seasons came to a close earlier this year. 3 lucky hunters harvested elk. Staff will be coordinating and conducted aerial surveys. They're completing habitat assessments at this time, currently estimating the elk population at a little over 300, close to 320 elk. The 2024 deer season total harvest ended up at 276,262 deer. Last year, deer hunters harvest and checked 326,000 deer. So harvest was down from our, as I'll remind everyone, our previous record high. A big part of the drop was the result of the fact that the firearms deer season was shifted back a week. The season can start as early as November 10th and as late as November 16th. And when we see these big shifts back to the 16th because of calendar creep, we tend to have a decline in harvest. The deer season this coming fall will be opening on the 15th, so similar kind of challenging conditions. Certainly, no doubt, continued large acorn crop in much of South Missouri contributed to the decline. as well, and then continued EHD outbreaks in some places. CWD update, continue to spend a tremendous amount of staff effort monitoring for chronic wasting disease across the landscape. 2024, sampling is still occurring, but we've identified 166 positives out of more than 35,000 samples. So again, I think this reflects the continued success of our management efforts, very, very low prevalence, while the increasing geographic distribution is certainly of concern to folks. The fact that we continue to have very, very low prevalence is encouraging. We have identified 6 new counties to this point: Audrain, Callaway, Lewis, Miller, Morgan, and Texas counties. Big note, one of the primary things that folks are always concerned about is the time it takes they get a sample dropped off till they get a test result back. It certainly impacts processing. The team both here at MDC as well as at the University of Missouri have done yeoman's work to try to minimize that time. So the team reported that the time of dropping off samples to the lab and receiving results averaged 3.6 days for ELISA testing, and then 7 additional days for an IHC confirmation on those positives. So doing everything we can to turn around samples as quickly as possible. Time to get samples to Mizzou certainly slows down when we got freezer head drops. This last year, we had 93 freezer head drops for folks in core areas or near core areas. 2,600 samples were collected that way, with 11 of those deers testing positive. Compared to last year, we had 26 more freezers available for the public and nearly doubled the number of samples. So again, it's a reflection of the interest of landowners and hunters in getting their deer tested. Staff began working with landowners on winter operations on January 16th, and that work will continue through March 15th in our CWD core area. So a huge shout out to our teams that are out there, many long hours this time of year, managing through tough weather conditions, doing additional CWD management work. Again, another huge shout out to our teams. We recently learned the U.S. Forest Service Chief Moore recognized the Missouri Feral Hog Partnership as recipients of the 2024 Chiefs Award for outstanding efforts towards eliminating feral hogs in Missouri. The Chiefs Award is the highest award of the U.S. Forest Service. It celebrates excellence and achievement by employees and partners to accomplish the Forest Service goals. The ceremony was intended to be held on Wednesday, but hopefully we'll have that rescheduled at a later date. Additionally, the National Deer Association recently announced MDC as a 2024 Agency of the Year Award winner. This award is presented annually to an agency that has practiced innovative and progressive deer management techniques, affected positive change in deer management regulations, hunter education, hunter recruitment, and/or involvement with youth hunting, and have engaged its hunters and other key stakeholders in the deer management process. MDC has been a recipient of this award in the past, but it's been a while. That was 2006. So again, congratulations to our teams who work very hard to continue to be leaders in conservation. Shepherd of the Hills grand opening, beautiful, beautiful facility. On December 19th, we opened the new Shepherd of the Hills Conservation Education Center to a very large and excited crowd. The room was packed, and I think if it hadn't been a little chilly outside, we'd probably had more, but folks were crammed in. The updated facility serves as the education center for the fish hatchery, and it sees around 200,000 visitors a year. Visitors will experience a new 8-minute educational video, view Missouri native reptiles and amphibians, view educational exhibits throughout the building, over 700,000 trout in the outdoor raceways, and then it'll be available for many, many programs and events throughout the year. Monass State Tournament is right around the corner. This year's tournament will be held March 19th through the 22nd. We're expecting more than 4,000 archers this year competing for trophies, medals, scholarships, and a chance to compete at the national event in Kentucky. The event will be held in Branson and will attract more than 20,000 spectators, with an estimated economic boost of $10 million for the area during the event. Missouri's NASS program leads the nation in participation and continues to grow. The 2023-2024 school year, we estimate 84,722 archers participated in the program, an 8,474 increase since 2020. So really excited about the growth there. We have 646 active schools, an increase of 124 schools in just the last 4 years. 61 school equipment grants were awarded in 2024, so we continue to see growth in that program. On the community conservation front, the department continues to work with partners in innovative ways to be relevant to all Missourians. Along with several partners in St. Louis, the department worked with Employment Connections to develop a green workforce implementation plan. The plan was developed after identifying a lack of regional training opportunities, especially targeting low-income residents and residents with significant barriers to employment. Through the implementation plan, a green jobs training program was executed, focusing on conservation and urban agriculture. This program provides paid training and support in partnership with Employee Connection, the Nature Conservancy, and other community stakeholders. The training program focuses on a curriculum that leads to apprenticeships, employment in urban agriculture, and conservation. On the other side of the state, the department is working with Cornerstones of Care, a similar program, through its Build Tribe program. Cornerstones of Care are implementing a training curriculum for the Conservation Landscape program. The curriculum includes training in installation and maintenance of low-impact development, green infrastructure, and other nature-based solutions with an emphasis on restoring vacant lots and other brownfields to improve water quality and wildlife habitat in the Blue River watershed. Both workforce development programs have been identified by MDC and its partners as barriers to the use, installation, and maintenance of native landscapes. So we're really excited about these partnerships. Public land highlights. Recently, Southeast Region team, Southeast Region Regional Administrator Matt Boyer's in the room with us today. So big shout out to him and his team. Demonstrated a One MDC innovation where anglers, partners, and MDC staff join together to teach, learn, work collaboratively, and improve the skills of forest, woodland, and lake habitat. The team taught multiple forest and woodland management workshops, teaching the assessment, scaling, marking, and milling of timber. Timber harvest during the workshop was then sawed down to size with a portable sawmill, then used to build pyramid fish habitat structures, which were placed into regional lakes, along with whole tree structures. Over 100 new fish structures were placed in Clearwater, Wapapello, and Paul T. Combs Lake during this event. Many acres of forest and woodland have been improved by removing selected trees to allow regrowth. The benefits for all the new lake habitat structures will be recognized and utilized by the local fishing community. The interdisciplinary project encompassed multiple districts in the Southeast Region and coordinated with the statewide resource management for the use of the sawmill. Planning is underway with Education and Protection Branch for another workshop at Horton Farms to also create materials for shooting ranges. So again, a huge shout out to our teams working together on shared goals. Private lands highlights from the St. Louis region. Photo to the left is PLC Rachel Williams and Private Land Conservationist Cody Bailey in the field with an environmental engineer from the company, Boozy. This landowner expressed interest in expanding their sustainability and environmental impact efforts to include fish, forest, and wildlife on their cement plant property in Jefferson County. In the picture, they're in a glade discussing potential natural community restoration strategies. The photo on the right, members of the Merrimack DCT assisting a private landowner with a stream bank stabilization project by using willow staking in Washington County. So again, huge shout out to staff working with a wide variety of landowners. The department hosted the 85th Midwest Fish and Wildlife Conference in St. Louis on January 19th through the 22nd. This year's conference attracted over 1,000 biologists and students from state, federal, and tribal natural resources agencies and universities from the Midwest, Great Plains, and Canadian provinces for the purposes of sharing technical presentations, poster displays, plenary sessions, and networking opportunities for wildlife professionals. Attendees include professionals in their field of fisheries and wildlife, including a number of state fish and wildlife agency directors, deputy directors, and program managers from across the region, fish and wildlife biologists, and a slew of college students. The theme was Road to Resilience, from surviving to thriving in conservation, which is timely considering the many conservation-related challenges we face. A huge shout out to Kathleen Silvano, our conservation educator from Kansas City region that coordinated the event for the department. And a huge shout out to all the department staff who made this event a success and truly a shining example of the work the department does. So again, appreciate everyone's efforts on that. Agent highlights. While conservation agents primarily focus on enforcing the wildlife code and connecting people with nature in their assigned communities, they also play a critical role in providing safety and security for the public, for the department staff and infrastructure. On January 13th, 12 conservation agents participated in the security detail for Governor Kehoe's inauguration ceremony. Conservation agents assisted with security at the ceremony site, manned barricades to control traffic, and monitored entry of attendees into the Capitol grounds. Just another example of the safety and security functions performed by our conservation agents. Lieutenant Andrew Mothershead recently completed an investigation into serious threats to the department's staff and infrastructure at Otter Slough Conservation Area. After not getting drawn for a hunting spot, a disgruntled duck hunter from Tennessee left a voicemail for area staff threatening to burn down the headquarters building. Local conservation agents responded to address the immediate threat and with assistance from officers from the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, and to interview the suspect, we were able to gather enough evidence to secure felony charges through the Stoddard County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. So again, lots of great work happening by our protection team. Quick research highlight, MDC staff are developing an opportunity index that overlays conservation areas and population centers to determine how far one would need to travel to enjoy nature. In many cases, most Missourians are within 45 minutes of a conservation area. The data will help with infrastructure management discussions, planning, and development of the agency's recreational use plan. Right around the corner is the trout opener. Bruce, we getting excited? Always. Trout opener Saturday, March 1st. So Saturday opener is always extremely popular with our anglers. We're hoping for good weather. We're certainly hoping for good weather. Our last Saturday opener was in 2014. We had good weather, it was in the mid-40s. All four parks had good attendance that year with just short of 6,700 total tags sold. Last year on opening day, it was a Friday, we had just under 6,500 tags sold. So March 1's around the corner. Many of us will be at Roaring River and another number of the other hatcheries celebrating that awesome, awesome day. Some history notes. We're going way, way back. Aaron pulled out an old copy of the Conservationist, which had an old report, special issue in there from Missouri Trails from the 1700s to 1976. In 1881, the first state fish hatchery was built in St. Joe for raising carp. In 1881 through 1882, the state distributed California salmon and carp. Interesting history, right? In 1943, the department estimated the deer herd at 10,474, an increase of 107% since 1939. In 1945, the snow and blue goose population at Squaw Creek National Wildlife Refuge, which today is known as Los Bluffs National Wildlife Refuge, peaked at 3,800. There will be more than 1 million there at times now. And on January 7th, 2011, Missouri's first elk, a spike bull, was captured in the hills of eastern Kentucky. 14 years ago. Hard to think that I was en route to Kentucky that day when we found out that it was happening. So with that, Madam Chair, concludes my report.
Thank you, Director. Commission, any questions for our Director?
Good job.
Ray?
Thank you. Jason, I just want to say a little bit about like what I said yesterday. First of all, I was so caught off guard and speechless by that Augusta award, I didn't have a moment to say anything, but I do want to take a moment to give a shout out to all the employees I saw on my travels around the state the last month or so at the duck zone hearings. The dedication and professionalism and transparency and inclusiveness of Reed and the teams from each of the regions who were there to support that workshop was just really inspiring. I wanted to go so that when I encounter duck hunters, and I am one of those from time to time, then I can really explain about the process and how their input made a big difference. And those hearings don't necessarily end the opportunity for public input. I guess I'll say right here, as we're being broadcast, I guess, by internet. So comments can still be submitted while Reed is pulling together all the statistics. But the way the meetings were set up were gave me great confidence in the establishment of the seasons and the zones. And then on my way from Portageville, I did go by Perryville, and I got off the highway and went to the local office where the CWD management team had a group gathered for their evening activities of managing the deer out on the public lands and the private properties. And to see the professionalism of that group of 6 individuals at 11 o'clock at night, and it went till midnight, you can't, I could not otherwise appreciate it from merely hearing it in a report or reading about it, but to be on the ground, to watch the organization, the process, the transporting of the deer to the processing shop down the road, the way they went about measuring and taking the data and harvesting the lymph nodes and all of this in this effort to contain CWD was, gave me confidence in everything the department is doing. So my hat is off to the teams across the state. They started this exercise when I was in St. Joe, and they were going out the first night. It was 15 degrees, and they've done that every night since. And so anyhow, please convey my appreciation. I know I speak for the commission.
Absolutely.
On how hard they work. And then inside this building, the team of Dr. Sherry Russell and Jason Isabel and Deb and others, really, it's unappreciated outside just how much effort they put into this management and containing. And yes, we're nationally recognized, but that is not why they do it any more than, well, maybe I did do this for the
Wandering Duck
Award, but anyhow, thanks to the team here. So
Very well said, Commissioner Wagner.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
appreciate those words, Commissioner Wagner. I think those are just, a few of the very many examples of the dedication, passion, professionalism of the team that makes this operation work, and quite honestly makes the director's office look pretty good. So we very, very much appreciate their
and we'll
efforts.
see the same thing on the opening of trout season on March 1. And so on and so forth for so many other programs.
Right.
We're going to hear about others.
Excellent. Thank you, Director. Next, we have a series of informational presentations. Deputy Director Jeffries.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Jason Jensen. Jason has worked for the department for 32 years. He currently serves as our Community and Private Land Branch Chief. Jason has held numerous positions in the agency. I won't go through listing all of them, but he is a dear friend of mine. He did work with me at the Capitol through 2012 through 2016, some of the more contentious years that we've had, which has really developed into a wonderful friendship. So Jason's going to give us a presentation on department partnerships. Here's Jason.
All right, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director, Deputies, appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk about partnerships today. I've whittled my presentation down to 73 slides in an attempt to make sure that we can get out of here by 3 o'clock today. But no, just kidding. In all honesty, partnerships are very important to the work that we do. There isn't hardly any component or any program within the department that isn't impacted in a positive way through partnerships. You know, watching the director's presentation and updates there this morning, I mean, I'm thinking constantly as he went through those slides about the partnerships that are represented there in a variety of different ways. So when we start talking about partnerships, you know, conservation is much bigger than just the Department of Conservation. Partnerships help increase the footprint of conservation throughout Missouri. It helps to increase the capacity of our staff. It helps in implementation of programming. It helps us reach new audiences throughout the state. And so there isn't many components of what we do within the Department of Conservation that isn't influenced in a positive way through partnerships. Those partnerships are extremely varied. I've got several that are listed there on the screen, but in an effort to stay on time this morning, we're not going to be able to talk about all those, and there's no way that we can even hit, you know, even 10% of the impact that partnerships truly have on us. Partnerships vary from private land partnerships to rural fire department partnerships to partnerships with schools. So to start off with, though, talking about some of the partnerships that we have on the community and private land conservation front. You know, Jason highlighted a couple of those on different parts of the state in his presentation there this morning. But if you look at the work that we do, you know, we have over 100 staff that are dedicated to working with private landowners that are some of the most important partners that we have in the state. Last year, they were able to make over 14,000 farm visits throughout the state. But from a partner perspective, if you look at the list of partners that we have there, just to highlight some of the work that they do, we have a partnership with Quail Forever, where we support some of the biologists that they employ. Last year, the Quail Forever biologists increased the capacity of our staff by making an additional 2,100 site visits with private landowners and impacting over 100,000 acres of positive habitat improvement on private lands. In addition to that, the other thing I really wanted to highlight here is there at the bottom you see PBAs. You know, we operate with acronyms, right? But that stands for Prescribed Burn Associations. So prescribed burn associations are something that's relatively new here in Missouri, but we've got 17 prescribed burn associations that have now been stood up or are in some process of forming. Prescribed burn associations are essentially a group of landowners that band together to assist each other on implementation of prescribed burns on their property. We support that effort through conservation equipment grants. So in other words, we provide some funding or some grants to those PBAs so that they have the tools that they need to actually be able to implement prescribed fire on their properties. You say, well, why is that important? Well, you know, we talk about the Wild Turkey Habitat Initiative. Prescribed burning is the most important tool that we have as far as improving wild turkey habitat throughout the state. From a community conservation perspective, you know, partnerships are really the cornerstone of our community conservation efforts. You know, the number of partners that we have are too numerous to list, and that consists of anything from cities to communities to municipalities, as well as dozens of other partners that we work with to implement those community conservation programs. Those partners accomplish everything from growing trees to distribution of trees to planting of trees, to encouraging the use of native plants and landscaping efforts, to converting and managing vacant lots in some of our urban areas throughout the state. Shifting gears just a little bit to more county level partnerships, I did want to highlight 3 different programs that we have that work at that county level. First one is payments in lieu of taxes, or what we call PILT payments. And so those were approved by voters in 1980. Essentially, PILT payments are made similar to how you would pay property taxes in counties that have MDC lands. So it's a payment in lieu of taxes. But every year, the department utilizes about $2 million from our budget to make those payments to those counties where MDC owns land. Another county level partnership is what we call the County Aid Road Trust Program. So this is a program that started in 1983. It's a voluntary partnership that we have with counties to maintain roads that actually are utilized to provide access to the public, to our public lands. So it's a partnership where we provide 50% cost share. It's a benefit to the department because it helps maintain our roads, or our access roads, but it's also a very valuable partnership to the counties because it helps to offset some of the costs associated with maintaining those roads. So the benefit to the county is typically in the form of gravel. Kind of the final county level partnership that I really wanted to highlight was low water crossing replacements. And so low water crossings are problematic for a number of reasons. Sometimes they can be a challenge to maintain at that county level. They can be dangerous for citizens that have to utilize those. And from a conservation perspective, they provide barriers to aquatic passage, which is problematic for a number of different species. So we've been working with counties on replacing those low water crossings. You know, to date, I think we've replaced 49 of those. And again, that provides a real win-win. Win to the aquatic species that are now able to pass, win because it's a safer roadway for citizens, and it's easier to maintain for those counties as well. Looking at MDC lands, you know, we manage a lot of open land on some of our conservation areas, and one of the tools that we use to do that is through our ag crop program. So in crop year 2024, we had about 47,000 acres that we used within the ag crop program. And that's where we typically work with local farmers to maybe farm a portion of the area or maybe graze or hay a portion of the area. In return, we use bartered services to get additional work done on the conservation area. That work could consist of things like establishing food plots, mowing, spraying invasive species, or a variety of other practices that we might use to help maintain and manage our conservation areas for the benefit of improving wildlife habitat. Shifting gears just a little bit, the department has, you know, some very robust partnerships with Missouri schools. Participation in MDC programs helps to connect kids with nature. And, you know, with that connection of spending time outdoors and spending time in nature has many health benefits. You know, we've seen there's scientific research that supports the idea that lower ADHD rates, kids that spend time in nature are able to focus and pay attention more in the classroom, lower obesity rates, lower rates of diabetes and things like that. So there's many benefits to that, and our programs that we have with schools helps to connect those kids with nature. So one of the basic tools for that is our Discover Nature Schools program, where we have about 45% of our schools throughout the state that are actually participating in those programs. In addition to that, you know, Jason already mentioned the upcoming archery Missouri MONAS tournament that's coming up, where we anticipate, you know, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 archers will participate in that. The final piece of this that I really wanted to focus on is volunteers. And so volunteers are a critical partner for implementation of a lot of these programs, including hunter ed programs. But focusing just on our stream teams throughout the state, last year, volunteers logged over 54,000 hours of volunteer time, you know, helping to clean up our waterways and keep our waterways safe for the public to use. Shifting gears just a little bit, you know, throughout my career with the department, wildfire prevalence has really changed, but that's a good thing. The occurrence of wildfires has went down dramatically. Part of the reason for that is the partnership that we have with our rural fire departments. So we provide both training and equipment to rural fire departments, as well as managing federal programs that help to provide equipment to those rural fire departments as well. MDC is constitutionally responsible for wildlife suppression, and so rural fire departments are a very critical partner in that suppression effort. And how could I possibly talk about partnerships without talking about our Missouri Feral Hog Elimination Partnership? You know, Jason already hit on this in the recent announcement of the award from the Forest Service, but you know, you look at the effectiveness of that partnership over time, and it's hard to find a more recent example of an effective partnership. And really that ICS structure that we have established there has really integrated staff from multiple agencies onto that same team to avoid duplication of effort, to make us more efficient and things like that. So it's definitely been a very effective partnership. And if you look at the success that we've had, you know, you look at the final tally from 2024, actually the final number from 2024 was 5,105 feral pigs removed from the landscape. That's the lowest number since 2015. So again, indicative of the success that we've had in reducing feral hog population throughout the state. And of course, this is the watershed presence map that we use to kind of track success, or another mechanism that we use to track success. And since the inception of the Missouri Feral Hog elimination partnership in 2016, we've seen an 84% reduction in the acreage occupied by feral hogs throughout the state. So one thing that I think a lot of the public don't probably know or understand is the emergency response that MDC staff are typically called upon to assist with. And so there's a lot of different emergency responses that we assist with, whether it's fire, whether it's swiftwater rescue, whether that's a search and rescue operation, whether that's a flood event, whether that's an ice storm, whether that's a windstorm. So a variety of different emergency responses that we're typically called upon to assist with. So you look at those photos, that photo in the bottom left-hand corner, it's actually Dave Widener. He's a retiree, a recent retiree that had over 40 years experience here with the department. That was during the 2007 ice storm that we had that severely impacted the southwest part of the state, especially Springfield. But in addition to that ice storm, we also responded to ice storms in 2008 and 2009 and multiple other years since that time. You know, talking about fire, if you look at that photo, you know, we've seen a lot of stuff about Southern California, the fires down around LA. That's actually a fire in Missouri that was fairly unique because that one occurred in June, the end of June of 2012. That's not typical of fire seasons in Missouri. That's not typical fire behavior that we see here either. But certainly it is possible, and therefore we do need to be vigilant and prepared for that. That particular fire occurred 3 years after a derecho that occurred in the southern part of the state, which blew down a tremendous amount of trees. Therefore, lots and lots of fuel that was cured out and available to burn at that time. Speaking of derechos, in May the 8th of 2009, we actually had a derecho that impacted hundreds of thousands of acres across the southern part of the state. These are all pictures from our conservation areas. That's actually a road that goes through those pine trees that you can't even hardly see. That one was from Madison County. Those other two photos are either from Reynolds or from Shannon County a couple days after that derecho went through. But the point is, MDC lands were severely impacted by that derecho. But before we went to work on MDC lands, we went to work assisting counties with opening up county roads. We worked for a couple weeks, making sure that emergency services were available to our citizens prior to going to work on our conservation areas. The next 2 years, we spent salvaging blowdown from from that derecho event. Which brings us to our next slide, partnerships with our forest products industry. You know, after that derecho, I mean, those partnerships are critical to managing the 600,000 acres of forest land that we manage on our conservation areas. So MDC manages forest land to manipulate and provide wildlife habitat while also sustaining forest health. But that management sometimes results in timber sales. And so when we have a timber sale on a conservation area, I think Michael Bill's going to talk about some here after a while, that's a partnership with a local logger that harvests those trees and processes those trees at local sawmills, adding value to those products multiple times. If you look at the forest products industry in Missouri, they provide an economic stimulus of $11.6 billion and support over 38,000 jobs here in Missouri. In addition to that, we also partner with the Missouri Forest Products Association on their professional timber harvester program and have since 1997, as well as their Missouri Master Logger Certification Program, which recognizes their experience and training in managing our forests here in Missouri. Did want to talk just a little about recreation and the recreational value of our publicly owned lands throughout the state. If you look at that slide on the left with the canoes, that's the Barclay access down on the Niangua River. You know, we get thousands of floaters and local businesses that utilize that access to either drop off or pick up floaters on the Niangua River. The center photo there is from Eminence, Missouri, cross-country trail rides. They have 8 different events throughout the year. typically they'll see anywhere from 300 to 2,200 riders that attend those events throughout the year. Why that's important? Well, Angeline Conservation Area has a significant amount of horse trails that are utilized as part of that cross-country trail ride. So it's a definite economic stimulus to that area. We look at the importance of tourism in Missouri. You know, tourism brings in $19.9 billion in total economic impact and supports 143,000 jobs throughout the state. So my final slide here, I was kind of looking for, well, what is a definition of a partnership? So looking for that definition, I did what anyone would do. You do a Google search, right? When you do a Google search, it's like working as partners, or, I'm like, oh, that's kind of corny, but, so this is kind of a definition that I came up to kind of summarize this. But, two organizations, being in a relationship, or being in a partnership, that is more than just transactional. So in other words, one organization cares about the other and supports and provides value to the other, because again, conservation is much bigger than just the department. And for our investment in partners, we're able to share resources, increase efficiency, add capacity, and expand connectivity with Missouri citizens. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great presentation, Jason. Commission, go Mark.
I'm glad you put that last slide up, Jason, and I kind of read that as, you say vice versa, it goes both ways, right?
Correct.
I think
Yep.
that's very important to point out, we get added value from all these partnerships as a conservation state agency, but a lot of these, especially a lot of the not-for-profits or NGOs, they wouldn't even be able to exist in some cases without MDC. Is that a fair statement?
I would say that that's probably a fair statement. I think that we've probably got a lot of NGO partners that we have throughout the state that, we might provide some seed funding for, that they are able to use and compound and expand upon throughout the state, so certainly.
Well, and I think about this, we have a lot of partnerships, clearly. Are we increasing partnerships over time, or is that number going up at all, or?
I would say over time, it absolutely has increased.
Right.
Commissioner. I don't have solid figures
No, I understand.
to provide that, but I would say, looking at budgeted funds, looking at cooperative agreements and things that we use to potentially manage
Right.
Those partnerships, I would say most definitely that it has gone up over time.
Well, and clearly then, in order to keep the partnership together, we have to provide staff to sustain that too.
Yes, exactly. So, especially when we talk about agreements, we have staff that are assigned to managing that agreement, managing that partnership to ensure that we're getting what we invest in those partners as well.
Right. And some of these are cooperative agreements, some are MOUs, I don't know, is that
Yes.
kind of how they're looked at?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. But everything has, are there some that just simply handshakes?
Oh, absolutely. You look at partners throughout the state, and again, back to the director's presentation, we talk about hunters, we talk about CWD and things like that, There's a lot of partnerships that are absolutely just a handshake, a visit over a cup of coffee, that kind of thing.
Okay. So they fall in those different categories then?
Yes,
so.
for sure.
All right. And this is to kind of summarize what I was thinking, you got some that are governmental in nature, other state agencies, federal agencies, and then these NGOs, and then, of course, the private industries associated. So they kind of fall in those three categories. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think that's accurate, which I didn't even talk about other, kind of governmental kind of partners, focused primarily on a lot of the NGOs and/or at that county level. But yeah, most definitely, we have tremendous partnerships with a variety of different federal agencies as well.
Good. Good presentation.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions.
Yes, Steve?
Questions. And the many hats you've worn, I think one of them was feral hog lead at one time, spent a lot of time down there. I know that partnership with USDA, that relationship, I just wonder how that's changed as far as what percentage of our staff is involved in that now as opposed in the past? And if you give us some insight just in general.
Yeah, so, you look at that feral hog partnership and the staff that we have that are dedicated to that over time. I mean, it's it's definitely been an iterative process, so we've learned, we've adapted, we've changed, we've, become more efficient, we've become more effective over time. So we went, at one time, we had a large percentage or a large number of MDC staff that were spending a portion of their time maybe dedicated to feral hog work. We found that the most efficient and the most effective way was to dedicate people to working on that effort. So in other words, they wake up in the morning thinking about removing feral pigs, and they go to sleep at night thinking about that. And so we changed our operation quite a bit over time to really focus people specifically on that issue and only on that issue, so that they didn't have to worry about all the other things that they might be responsible for. So, I would say that that's just one example of how that operation has changed over time and made us more efficient and more effective as well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you personally were displaced from your home for quite some time. You spent a lot of time down there. And, because your base was here, but, are we still seeing that with MDC staff of having to travel and stay for a period of time? Or is it disruptive? I think it was for you, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it just seemed like I couldn't believe what you were having to do, so to speak.
Yeah, again, I think it goes back to the dedication of our staff, the passion that our staff have for, for their jobs. Again, certainly I think that we've reduced the number of staff that are actually engaged in feral hog work, but we've dedicated them completely to that effort. So most of those staff are all local. So they're living in the areas where they're working at.
Okay. The other question I had, and it's probably a little bit deeper than this, but I just wanted to kind of put a bug in your ear so we can talk about the County Aid Trust Program. And, there's been lots of issues on the Schaefer Road at Georgia White Nursery, and there's been legislature and funding allocated and then taken away and that sort of thing. Is there any chance of this type of funding being able to assist in that, or do you have any suggestions how we could participate to help with that?
Yeah, in fact, I actually just got a phone call on that the other day.
Me too.
And I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in the CART program, but, my understanding of the CART program is that is a partnership between the department and counties. My understanding of the Schaefer Road is that road is owned by MoDOT, another state agency. So I think that probably needs to be part of bigger discussions on how we could potentially.
Well, just to clarify, this trust program, that's for access to public land for public use. That's really what that funding's allocated for. Is that correct?
Yes.
So it would not be appropriate funding for that, if my understanding is correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Great questions. Commission, any other questions for Jason? Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
Next on the agenda, we have a communications update with Branch Chief Heather Feeler.
Well, good morning, commissioners, director, deputies, Nicole, Kyle. So good to see you, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity to have time to talk about communication on the agenda today. So this is my daughter Sloan, enjoying everything that Runge Nature Center has to offer, and Runge has really been a happy place for our family. My boys, who are now 18 and 21, grew up spending a lot of time at Runge Nature Center, and they loved the staff and volunteers there that really helped them learn how to connect with nature. And I remember when I started at the department 10 years ago in communication, the first time I came down our stairs in my new signature wear with the logo on one side and my name embroidered on the other side, my son ran up to me and hugged my legs and looked up, and he said, "I am so proud of you. I always wanted a mom that worked at the Nature Center." And I will tell you, with that pride in his eyes, I did not have the heart to tell him that I didn't actually work at the Nature Center. And that was my mistake for not correcting that immediately. So for months, he told everybody he knew, his teachers, his friends, people at church, that I ran the nature center, and just to call over there and I would get them whatever they wanted. And they did call. And they talked to Kathy, who was the actual nature center manager. So finally, I had to sit him down and I had to explain to him that I was in communications and what that was involved, what I did every day. And he said, "Oh, well, that sounds fun too." So in that spirit, let the fun begin. I'd like to share a little bit about a communication team overview, who our communication team is, our communication numbers, sharing the conservation story, reaching new audiences, some things that we are working on to do that, and then some communication notables. While I get the privilege to be up here today sharing about communication, I want to highlight the incredible communication team that I get to work with every day and that is wonderful at their jobs. And so this includes a lot of different disciplines, including our digital, web, audio, video, our magazine team, marketing, media and news, publications, and our distribution center. But communication is not just the work of those with communication in their title or those that are part of the communication branch. It also involves our statewide teams, many in the room, our regional teams, our internal communication, our partnership outreach and communication that Jason just shared earlier, and all of those that share our story. As you know, it's every question that you answer at the gas station from a member of the public, or across the dinner table from your family, or for presentations that you give to community groups in your hometown. And so the list goes on in the way that we communicate about what we are doing as a department, and all of those are vital to our communication efforts. And while communication often involves a lot of words, which I love and are important, we also track numbers to help assess our communication efforts, including areas where we might be doing a great job or areas where we might need to adjust and redirect our strategy. Here are the social media channels that MDC is on. This includes LinkedIn, which is primarily used by our HR team for recruiting efforts, but the rest of the channels are managed by the MDC team. This is a monthly report that we look at, kind of visual for our team, that we do every month to assess as a team kind of how we're doing. And so it is just a quick snapshot in November of our followers, our growth on each channel, and engagement. And so you can see we had some channels that had increases, we had some that went down. And so again, a chance for us to look at sentiment and look at how our channels are doing. Last fiscal year overall, we had a 7% growth rate in MDC's Facebook, X or Twitter, and Instagram. Some of that growth also includes utilizing tools that we have on those platforms, such as Facebook Live, which is a great way to get greater visibility than standard posts. It tells your followers, hey, MDC is live, tune in. It also provides the opportunity to highlight different staff, have them be on camera, talk about different areas, highlight staff around the state. We've also been highlighting a lot of habitat hints in the last year. Lucas Bond has been leading that effort, but again, a chance to share habitat work, how landowners can really engage with that, and work that we can do to move conservation forward together. Our Instagram channel, we focus on really showcasing wild Missouri, a much younger demographic. 62% of Instagram users are under the age of 34. And so we also use Instagram Reels, kind of short videos. Again, people's attention span are not very long. And so the idea that Instagram Reels are just short videos and ways that we can connect. And I'll share a little more in a few more slides about some of our Instagram Reels to give you a flavor of what that looks like. While maybe not as glamorous and out front as social media, email and texting continues to be a solid communication tool for the department. We utilize a system called GovDelivery, where we send out email communications such as statewide and regional news, and we also offer texting at our facilities, including our nature centers and shooting ranges. So we currently have over 823,000 subscribers, and a subscriber is one email or phone number. So for example, I'm Heather Feeler. I have one email address, so I am one subscriber, but I get statewide news from the department. I get Central Missouri news because I live in Central Missouri. I get commission updates, of course. And then I also get Runge texts because I'm a busy mom and I like reminders for texts on Runge Nature Center happenings because I'd like to bring Sloan there. So I'm one subscriber, but I have 4 subscriptions from the department. Subscribers can go in at any time and update their subscriptions. They can choose to add more information they would like to get to the department. They can refine their list of news they get. And this hurts my heart to say a little bit. They can also unsubscribe if they so choose. And so that is for the subscriber to decide. Our MDC website is one of our largest communication channels for the department. Last fiscal year, we saw 7.9 million users come to our website with a singular intent to get their questions answered. We can also tell from the data how they are coming to our website, engagement by age and gender. And then we also do, you can see on the right, a customer experience survey to understand, did they complete their goal? How easy was it to use our website, and how satisfied are they? And then our web team looks at that data and then can make real-time changes to our website to enhance that user experience as we go. For our magazines, including the Missouri Conservationist and Explorer magazine, you can see our current subscribers for each magazine circled in red. I'll talk in just a couple more slides about how some ways we are trying to reach new audiences with our magazine content, but wanted to share the numbers first. Our metric for the magazine is to grow it by 2% each year, both print, our digital book, and MoCon app. We had a slight dip in the last few months, as you can see there from the data. We identified and fixed a postal service issue. We get the postal service report of updated addresses. It goes directly to our subscriber report. We discovered that some updates were coming in, but not all. So when we discovered that, we updated those addresses in bulk that had not been pulled in, and so that is correct for a more accurate database, but it did result in a dip in our magazine subscribers. I want to transition a little bit to sharing our story. I think we have awesome jobs. The work we do is varied across the department, and I'm a firm believer that people want to journey with us and really understand some of the work that we get to do. So we ask staff around the state to send us photos and videos of the work that they're doing, and then we utilize that on social media to share more broadly. So for example, this was a video that was sent in by Aaron Shank in St. Louis when they were doing tarantula research. Now, some folks might not even know that we have Missouri tarantulas, and honestly, maybe they don't want to know that. And that we also do research on them, and so just a really unique opportunity to share our research efforts, but to also educate the public of the work we do. And so this was just a short video that Aaron sent to us, and we utilized it as an Instagram reel, and so I will play it here, and hopefully we can also see sound, or hear sound.
There it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 5, 6, 7.
So again, very short. I mean, we could listen to it over and over, that would be nice. But, and again, just a way to educate the public about what we're doing, but to do it in interesting ways. We also send statewide and regional news releases to share our story, which I shared a little bit through our GovDelivery, as well as work directly with media to help share our story as well. We send these news releases out through email, but we also post on our website under our newsroom to be archived, and then we cross-promote on social media. While years ago, kind of newsroom relied heavily on all news releases, whether they ran that in its entirety or whether they made it a story, most newsrooms now are scrolling social media to find those stories. And so ensuring that not only do we send them the news release, do we not only have access on our website, but that we're also providing that content on social media. So we find a lot of stories that media run generated from things that we post on our own social media channels. Well, I shared a little bit about our MDC website. We also have worked with the science branch in the last year on upgrading our research website. This research site is a chance to share data and research more in depth, including projects, papers, and presentations, and the teams that work on those that we can share with our partners and the public. The team is still working on adding additional projects and data to that website, but it's a great communication tool for accessing the research that we do as a department. Want to transition a little bit to reaching new audiences. We talked about our magazine numbers, but just a little background on the Missouri Conservationist magazine. The first edition was published in 1938, and it was a quarterly publication until 1943, when it was published monthly, and it has been a monthly publication since then. It has a long history and a strong foundation of sharing conservation information in Missouri. And as the director can share, we still get consistent reader comments, even about his column, including those that have been loyal readers for generations. And I'm telling you, those stories are so heartwarming and just wonderful how it has influenced people. And so our goal as a magazine team is to keep those loyal readers engaged and educated, and we also want to introduce new readers to the magazine that may not know us or understand how they can help move conservation forward. So this fiscal year, we are conducting an in-depth magazine reader assessment, which includes a survey portion that we just completed, and then focus groups this coming spring. The last reader focus groups were handled in 2016, which helped direct our redesign that we did in 2017. This new data will help us determine future changes to content and design, as well as gain insights in how we can diversify and grow our readership. I will share that the executive summaries from the reader survey portion were very exciting and encouraging for efforts to build a more diverse audience, engage current readers, and maintain a positive relationship between the department and the public. Three things I wanted to note from that executive summary that the readers told us: that nearly all Missouri Conservationist readers are satisfied with the publication, feel the delivery methods they can choose from exceeds their expectations, are very likely to continue reading the magazine or recommend it to others. The second was that nearly all readers say the publication has influenced them to do outdoor-related activities in the last 3 years. And the last is Missouri readers say the Missouri Conservationist has had a significant impact on their awareness, appreciation, beliefs, support, and actions around conservation. And the newer readers, which we say are they've been reading the magazine 3 years or less, are trending toward younger, female, and urban. Our Nature Boost podcast launched back in 2020 and was developed to bring people on a journey with us that may be new to conservation and learning about nature. And so that really includes kind of an urban audience and millennial focus of those kind of 29 to 44 years old. The podcast is free, and a new episode comes out the third Thursday of every month. We are going to be adding additional episodes starting this spring, so we will have even more that we will be able to share. We solicit podcast ideas from our listeners through the public, through our website, through reader emails, and on social media. So how are we doing at reaching that younger demographic with our podcast? So downloads are up 20% in 2024 compared to 2023. And you can see from the graph percentage of our Nature Boost listeners by age. 60% are in that millennial 29 to 44 category, and 25% in the Gen Z 13 to 28. The communication team, along with Relevancy, has also been working on an influencer marketing pilot the last few months to test how the use of influencers could expand our reach of our conservation message. So what is influencer? We kind of hear that term kind of thrown out, but it's a type of social media marketing that uses mentions from influencers who have a dedicated following or are viewed as experts in their niche, and there's a lot of different niches that people have, and can drive action from their target audience. And so when we first started this pilot, one of the first things we did was to have influencer marketing training for our team to really better understand the process of working with influencers, including selecting them, how do you do that, and content development with them. So for our pilot, we selected 2 influencers to start. You can see Brenda and Sarah here, their photos for our influencer marketing pilot for the last 6 months, and them sharing MDC content and reaching that 18 to 34-year-old demographic. We continue to learn as a team how to work with influencers, including the creation of their content, how they do that, which is unique to each influencer, and also the review process. The pilot campaign ended December 31st, and so we are going to be meeting next week to learn more about those numbers, the effectiveness, what we can learn from the first pilot, and then what that might look like in terms of our next steps as a department. New in 2025 is our Missouri Birding Challenge. I know everybody knows this, but birds are awesome, right? Yes. But also a great way to connect people of all ages and all abilities with being in the outdoors. So MDC, along with our partners, is launching the first ever virtual Missouri Birding Challenge. Challenge participants can compete alone or in a group, different categories based on their ages, their birding experience, or really their comfort level, and they will record those on eBird. To prepare for the challenge, MDC is offering monthly webinars leading up to the challenge to educate participants on birding and key issues around birds and birding in Missouri. We had our first webinar in January, Intro to Birding, with our MDC ornithologist, Kristen Heathacre. We had more than 100 people log on to learn more about birds. Our next webinar will be February 13th on how birders contribute to science through eBird and using eBird. So stay tuned for more on our birding challenge. And last, but certainly not least, some notable mentions. The entire issue of our November-December Explore Kids magazine was an educational board game for kids. So they could cut out from cover to cover and really play that game at home with their family and learn more about nature through that game. It was also a great tool for nature centers to use as events at their facilities and also in classrooms through our Discover Nature Schools program. Our publication team has also been busy. We have a new Explorer Mini Field Guide in progress, a for-sale book at our Nature Center and online nature shop, and we are already soliciting beautiful Missouri photos for our 2026 natural events calendar. So with that, I'm gonna pause, quiet my spirit, and ask if you have any questions for me. Because I talk fast, sorry.
Okay, commissioners, this is not a subject matter I care about at all as a journalist, but I will defer to you first for any questions or comments to Heather's wonderful presentation.
Talk to me about AI.
That's one of my questions.
Yeah, so our team, great question. So our team had a presenter come to our in-person communication branch meeting that we had in October for our team to learn more about AI. How they are being used in marketing and communication efforts, some things that we should be thoughtful about. And so our team will be meeting in February to talk through what does that look like for our team. And again, it's a wider topic, right?
Sure,
It's not
sure,
just
yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
how people are using AI, but again, it'll be a larger discussion about how the department will be using AI. Some things we need to be thoughtful about, what that looks like. And so, so I think top of mind for us, I think we've kind of continue to learn about it, and I think the next step will be to talk about the ways the department will use it or not use it,
Right.
And what we will do with that moving forward. And again, starting kind of with our communication branch, because that's the work we do, but again, all of us are part of communication efforts, so I think it'll be a broader communication with the department as we move forward.
Okay.
As a
Definitely.
quick follow-up to that,
Yeah.
have we explored putting a customer service chatbot on the homepage? Because we know folks are going to the website with a question.
Yeah, so we have, and I can get you more details on that. So we piloted a chatbot a few years ago.
Yeah.
And the technology was just not there. We had
Right.
some nuances with our regulations that we,
Right.
wanted to make sure that people were getting their question answered accurately.
Right.
But we have seen some things improve with that technology. So, chatbot continues to be on the radar. One of the things that the web team is exploring, and we've met with IT too, is something called a semantic search on our website. So right now, when you search, if you search for boating, only things with boating will pull up. And so semantic search allows for the ability to infer kind of what you might mean, pull up content that more accurately, describes that. And so I think it will be a nice enhancement in terms of people searching our website and things like that. But yeah, continue to explore those options, and I think technology has gotten better over the years with some of that. Yeah.
Excellent. Ray, Steve? Steve?
First off, I always enjoy listening to you speak. It's obvious you love what you do.
I do, a lot, yeah.
It's pretty obvious. You just,
I know, it's a lot.
anyway, it's pretty cool.
All the time.
You didn't talk as fast as you did last time, so
I
I was
know.
impressed.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Okay, a question on communication.
Yes.
One of the areas that we're getting criticized a lot is on our CWD management right now. And, of course, it's a hot topic on social media, that sort of thing. What type of message are we giving, or what areas are you addressing to help educate the public? And I'll just use a generic one. You see on social media that we're trying to kill all the deer in Missouri with what we're doing right now. And we're killing less than 0.5% of what's the total harvest is, in the counties, Franklin County, we've talked about it, it continues to lead the state in number of harvests. They've been doing, targeted population management for many years. So what are we doing to educate the public so we help them understand that? Because I didn't see anything in the slide unless I missed something, but could you give it a little insight?
Sure, yeah, no, absolutely. And I did include it in mine. I know we talked about it at the workshop yesterday, that I was, listening in part of that. And I will tell you, working very closely with science, working very closely with the director's office, this communication topic is at the top, right? Again, misinformation out there, things we need to do. And so I would say historically, for CWD, what we've tried to focus on is educating people about CWD, what it is, and how the regulations can help with that. I think where we're at now with misinformation is really transitioning to correcting those myths that people have. We're doing that through some video content we're putting out. And I think to a bigger picture is what will happen if we do nothing, right? And I think we're seeing some states that are reflecting some things that we're seeing. They're seeing that we're not yet, thankfully, because of our management efforts that we've done. And so I think really trying to also showcase some of that and be able to share some of that. So lots of things in terms of trying to educate on myths that are out there, how we can help do that. And social media is hard, right? Because, the director and I have talked about this. The algorithm for social media is what you put out there on your own personal page, you get more of that content, right? And so people who think the same way you do, that have those kind of things, and so it can be hard to kind of break through that. But I think continuing to correct information, continuing to showcase what would happen if we did nothing. And so again, top of mind for my team, priority in terms of communication, I think for the whole department.
Okay, so if someone in the public asked me, say, in a topic I likely don't know the answer to, where could I direct them, like on our website or something, to say, look, this is an area that you can gain and understand information on that. Could you give me some insight on what I could tell them by chance?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we have tons of information out there on our CWD and lots of, for our website. We also have videos that we've done, and so can definitely, yeah.
Do we have a pull-down box on the website that we can actually see some stuff there, or?
Sorry, do we have a?
Where on the website would I look? Or you give me a little insight or something, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, under our wildlife diseases, yeah, we definitely have content there, and I'd be glad to make
Okay,
sure you have
okay.
that information, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely.
Madam Chair?
Sure.
Heather, just to make a comment, follow up Steve's comment, that I always appreciate your presentations and what you and your team do. I think the website is unbelievable. I found myself the other day poking around on it and came across the link to fish stories. I just sat there and watched, seems for an hour, one little 1 minute video after the next about records set, how to fish, and so on and so forth, and it was really enlightening. And that's just a fraction. There's so many places to find information and information about upcoming seasons. And then your course offerings across the state are so wide-ranging. There's something to appeal to everybody. The first time I really went on and intended to sign up, unfortunately, I wasn't able to do it that evening, but when you were going to do your course on gratitude, and what might that have to do with conservation? Well, I can assure you it has a lot to do with appreciating the outdoors and so on. So I look forward to taking that someday. But thank you for all of this. And Explore Magazine, I've got a picture that I've circulated to some here of my granddaughter sitting on her swing hanging from a tree branch at 6:30 in the morning because she couldn't read it the night before, but she got up early to read it before school, and you could just see the vivid colors of the magazine as she was soaking it up on that swing. And,
I've seen that photo. That's a lovely photo.
So thanks for what you do. for
Absolutely.
all Missourians.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So I'll just conclude, and I can talk as fast as you can. It's like people who are in communications, that's what we do. But print is powerful. So I think I shared the story with you. We had a neighbor who passed away in the last year, and he would read the Conservationist magazine with his grandchildren. And that was their powerful connection point, so much so that they gave memorials to the department because it was so meaningful to their family. And so print is powerful. There are challenges. It is still as relevant in some demographics as it always was, but we also have had a lot of printer consolidation. Are we experiencing challenges with those bids for the magazine?
So we met, I think just a couple months ago with our printer, and the consolidation of those printers, paper shortages, which are getting better, those kind of things. So it is a constant, challenge, but also trying to stay ahead of what those projections might look like, what paper would be, how much we stored, those kind of things. And so, so as you know, it's just an ongoing conversation in terms of those. But so far, we've had success, and our magazine manager, Stephanie Thurber, has done a great job with those relationships, with the communication and constant communication, not only on our paper rolls, but also the printer and what that looks like. So she's done a great job, because again, just monitoring that, making sure we're on top of that,
And
is
so
important.
I applaud all of the multimedia that you guys are doing, a big shift to vertical video. We know that's where the audience attention is, especially on socials. Quick clarifying question, we are not on TikTok, is that correct?
We are not, correct.
Okay,
We do not have a tic-tac.
Excellent.
Tic-tac.
TikTok.
Or TikTok, yeah.
TikTok.
Ray, if you need a short course version of her gratitude, you should listen to the Nature Boost podcast episode, because her and Jill did a wonderful job together. And I didn't know that you guys were gonna be ending up hammocking, but I guessed it at the end.
Right.
And so it was a pleasant surprise.
I love a hammock. There's nothing more relaxing out of nature, so,
Quick follow-up on the influencers. So the two examples you shared from that pilot, they were both female, more enjoyment of nature-based. Have we explored more traditional, either hunter or fishing-based influencers?
Yeah, so as a team, when we were kind of looking through the variety of influencers, we did explore a lot for the pilot. We went with one that was more urban, trended to kind of, fashion things, different things, and then a family-oriented one. But we did explore others that had a more agricultural background, hunting, fishing, those kind of things too. And so I think moving forward, that'll be ongoing discussions of, what that looks like. And really interesting about how you look at a suite of influencers and what their organic reach is, what their rate card is for the work they do, what that all looks like. And so we are learning a lot through this process, which has been great.
Right,
But yes,
absolutely.
definitely,
All right.
Well,
Go ahead, Mark.
Since it's a pilot, then pilots should do analysis of what the effectiveness is. And then, of course, you come back and say, well, it's effective, it should go forward, then it expands the program into the future. Is that kind of how it works?
Right, so that'll be our next steps, yes.
I got
It's, how did these two do? Do we have the right influencers? Do we need to pick different ones? Did we have the result we even wanted? Do we want to continue to move forward with that? So, so definitely kind of evaluating its effectiveness, but even the reach of those two influencers, were they the right ones? Do we stick with one? Do we do two new ones, or, what does that look like? So
Perfect.
absolutely,
All right, good job, thank you.
It's a whole different kind of partnership
it is.
to build off of Jason's presentation.
Yeah, it is.
Excellent. Okay, Heather, thank you so
Thank you.
much. Next, I would like to direct the commission's attention to our consent calendar, and do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are going to shift gears to Deputy Director Laura Conley for updates from the Regulations Committee.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director Sumners. You may recall being informed of one proposed amendment from mid-year code review that was erroneously omitted by the Secretary of State from publication in the Missouri Register following initial commission approval at your September meeting. Due to the omission, this rulemaking was not available with the rest of the mid-year code review items for final commission consideration in December. The proposed rulemaking for 3 CSR 10-12.130 fishing, general provisions, and seasons has now been through the formal publication and public comment process and is presented today for your final consideration. Note 2 comments were received, however, neither comment was specifically related to the proposed change to remove Missouri Western State University, South Pond, from specific fishing conditions due to their desire to no longer participate in the Community Assistance Program. This presentation of an order of rulemaking as formal commission action items signifies the final step in the department's regulations process. The commission has the authority to adopt as originally written, amend, or withdraw the proposed regulation. If approved today, this change will be effective April 30th, 2025. Madam Chair, unless the commission has any questions or concerns, I request approval for this final order of rulemaking with no changes to the original recommendation.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. Madam Chair, with your permission, I'll move into my formal report.
Yes, go ahead.
The Regulations Committee met on January 3rd for the annual review of the Wildlife Code. Today, I will present several action items from that meeting for your consideration. Commissioners, as a reminder, your approval of these proposed amendments signifies the first step in the Department of Conservation's rulemaking process. Following your vote today, all approved proposed rulemakings will be filed with the Secretary of State's office. After publication in the Missouri Register, the proposals will be open for a formal 30-day public comment period. Comments received on specific proposals will be compiled and presented as part of the formal orders of rulemaking for commission consideration at your meeting in May. The anticipated effective date of these changes is August 30th, 2025, unless otherwise noted. Regional Resource Management has brought forward a suite of 5 proposed amendments to modify regulations on Prairie Fork Conservation Area and the Waters Russell Unit of Three Creeks Conservation Area. Prairie Fork Conservation Area is currently posted as closed to the public use except as authorized by the area manager. Allowing public use without prior area manager authorization will provide more public use opportunities on this area. However, since Prairie Fork Conservation Area also hosts many outreach and educational programs, events, and ongoing research projects with cooperators, several changes are recommended to manage acceptable public use consistent with department nature centers. These include prohibiting pets and hunting dogs, not allowing bicycles on service roads, and not permitting equestrian use on roads open to vehicular traffic, prohibiting the taking of nuts, berries, fruits, edible wild greens, and mushrooms, and prohibiting hunting except for managed deer hunts and MDC-led mentored small game hunts. The Three Creeks Conservation Area Waters Russell Unit is in 111 acres of the 1,599 acre area in Boone County that is the location of the Boone County Nature School. Unlike the rest of Three Creeks Conservation Area, public use management of this unit should align with what would be expected at public school grounds. Recommended changes include prohibiting pets and hunting dogs, prohibiting hunting except for managed deer hunts and MDC-led mentored small game hunts, and restricting fishing to authorized educational groups. Madam Chair, I request approval of these proposed amendments as described and detailed in your packet.
Do I have a motion to approve staff recommendations?
So
You have a
moved.
motion? Second.
A second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. Science Branch brought forward the next 2 proposals. Changes to 3 CSR 10-5.205, permits required exceptions, would allow a hunter with a disability who's permitted to hunt a bear or elk to be accompanied by another person who does not possess a bear or elk permit. Changes to 10-7.700 elk hunting seasons general provisions would establish the requirement of hunters to report harvest of an elk through the Telecheck harvest reporting system prior to transportation outside the county of harvest if that were to occur prior to the established requirement to report harvest of that elk by 10 p.m. on the day taken. As a reminder, the Commission has given initial approval to rescind the intrastate cervid carcass transportation regulations and establish cervid carcass disposal regulations. This proposal aligns the harvest reporting requirement for elk with deer, creating regulatory simplicity. For your awareness, the public comment period regarding cervid carcass transportation and disposal will open February 19th, with final consideration at your April 4th meeting. Madam Chair, I request approval of these 2 proposed amendments as described.
Do I have a motion to approve staff recommendations?
You have a motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. Commissioners, the last set of recommendations comes from Statewide Resource Management Branch. One proposed change is at the request of a Community Assistance Program partner to add Dexter City Lake to areas where only boats without motors may be used. The other 5 recommendations are due to a CAP partner name change. The city of Sedalia has undergone a reorganization, and Spring Fork Lake is now under the purview of the city instead of the Sedalia Water Department. Updates are needed to 5 rules to reflect the new name. Madam Chair, I request approval of these 6 proposed amendments as described.
Do I have a motion to approve staff recommendations?
So moved. Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. Commissioners, since my last Regulations Committee report, most stakeholder input has related to deer season. A summary of all comments received is included in my formal report beginning on page 2. Madam Chair, unless you or members of the commission have questions, this concludes the regulation action items and the Regulations Committee report.
Commissioners, any questions for Laura at this time? Okay. Laura, if I can suggest, we are going to hit the pause button on our meeting and take a 7-minute break.
Sounds good.
Until we proceed with our next part. Okay?
Perfect. Okay.
So everyone, 7 minutes. gavel, just to get attention. Okay. All right, we are going to resume. Deputy Director Conley, would you please introduce our next speaker?
Absolutely. At this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Charles Anderson to the podium for an informational presentation on non-resident hunter participation in Missouri. Dr. Anderson has been with the department since 2011 and has served in various roles, currently as the Science Branch Game and Regulation Unit Supervisor. He holds a Master of Science in Forest Wildlife Management from Stephen F. Austin State University and a PhD in Wildlife Ecology from Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. Charles has also been certified as a wildlife biologist through the Wildlife Society. Dr. Anderson will be providing data specific to non-resident participation as related to hunting white-tailed deer, eastern wild turkey, and waterfowl. He will also provide general information on non-resident contributions to Missouri conservation through the purchase of hunting permits. Following Dr. Anderson's portion of the presentation, I will provide several slides to facilitate discussion on this topic and any questions on the topic as well. Charles, the podium's yours.
All right, thank you, Deputy Director Conley. And good morning, Commissioners, and everybody else in the room with us. Before I get into the non-resident presentation, I'd like to thank many army of folks that have assisted in providing information that I'm going to summarize and present in today's presentation. Without them, this wouldn't get done in the timely fashion that it did. As a general outline of the presentation, I will speak on deer first, then turkey, providing information on non-resident permit price and revenue, number of non-resident hunters, non-resident harvest, some comparisons to other states, and postseason surveys. I will also provide information regarding waterfowl on intensively managed wetlands and non-resident participation. We will move then on to information on economic data and then additional considerations and discussion opportunity. So moving right into white-tailed deer. For this slide, we provide a 2024 adult firearm deer permit price information for non-residents in green and residents in brown. We are comparing our firearm any deer permit to what the price it would take to deer hunt in another state. In some states, in addition to a deer permit, non-residents hunters may also need other licenses or stamps. We just want to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples with our firearm any deer permit. In general, non-resident price is higher from left to right. Missouri non-resident price is lower than Oklahoma and similar to other states like Tennessee. The resident price is similar across the board, with Missouri having a lower resident price than surrounding states. For this slide, we have Missouri non-resident permit price in green and the surrounding state average in brown for 2014 to 2024. MDC has steadily increased permit prices over the last several years to keep up with ever-increasing costs of conservation. The cost of non-resident deer permits remains below other states, and the department has made several increases in the permit price over the last 5 years. Since 2020, the cost of non-resident any deer hunting permit for both archery and firearms was $225, and as of January 1, 2025, the cost has increased to $288, a more than 20% increase. For this slide, we're looking at a permit-based revenue for residents and non-residents for the last several years. Deer permit revenue is shown on top. In 2024, non-residents accounted for approximately 53% of deer permit revenue. On the bottom, we have the number of permits purchased between residents and non-residents. And in 2024, non-residents accounted for approximately 6% of all deer permits purchased. For this slide, we're looking at the number of individual adult archery hunters from 2014 to 2024, with non-residents in brown and residents in blue. Non-resident participation in archery deer hunting has slightly increased over the last decade, but remains low compared to resident participation. Overall, non-residents make up approximately 12% of all archery deer hunters. Additionally, the increase in the proportion of non-resident archery deer hunters from 2021 to 24 is amplified by a decrease in the number of resident archery deer hunters over the same time period. Then we look at the number of individual firearm deer hunter, adult individual firearm deer hunters from 2014 to 2024, with non-residents in brown and residents in blue. Non-resident participation in firearms deer hunting has slightly increased over the last several years, but non-resident hunters remain low compared to resident participation. Overall, non-residents make up approximately 6% of all firearm deer hunters. Additionally, the proportion of non-resident firearm deer hunters has remained relatively flat from 21 to 24. This is a figure of non-resident percent of the total harvest by county, utilizing adult hunters with an archery any deer permit. Although the percentage of non-resident hunters remain low, there is a substantial geographic variability in harvest distribution attributed to non-resident hunters. Northern Missouri and some areas of southern Missouri experience a higher proportion of the harvest attributed to non-resident hunters compared to other areas of the state. With this figure, we utilize the same parameters, but we're looking at firearm any deer permit now. We see less geographic variability and a noticeable decrease, though, in the proportion of harvest attributed to non-residents compared to with the archer's permit. Northern Missouri and a couple counties in southern Missouri experience a higher proportion of non-resident hunters contributing to overall harvest totals compared to other areas of the state. Continuing with the firearms any deer permit, looking at non-resident percent of the total harvest just on public land, there is a geographic variability in the harvest distribution attributed to non-resident hunters. Northern Missouri experiences a higher proportion of non-resident hunters contributing to the overall harvest totals compared to other areas of the state. I wanted to point out a quick example, though, that counties like Putnam have less public land, and the average total harvest in that county for the last several years, it was 61 deer across public land on both residents and non-residents. Continuing the trend of firearm any deer permit, we now are looking at non-resident percent of total harvest on private land. We can see a noticeable change for public land figure with a decrease in those counties with greater than 50% of the harvest attributed to non-residents. When looking at methods for allocating deer hunting opportunity in other states, it varies by state and includes using the use of drawings, quota systems, or over-the-counter permits. The approach to allocating non-resident hunter opportunity for firearms deer hunting also varies across states. It varies from unlimited opportunity to caps on the number of hunters by season and or method of take. And lastly, for our deer information for the 2023 deer season, we asked a question to resident hunters only if they agree that, or resident hunters only if they agree that there are too many non-resident deer hunters in the county they hunted most. We do not have the 2024 data as of yet. Although there is geographic variability in the distribution of those who agreed with the question, northern Missouri and some areas of southern Missouri experienced higher numbers of individuals that agreed there are too many non-residents in the county they hunted the most than compared to other areas of the state. So moving on to eastern wild turkey. When discussing 2024 spring turkey permit prices, we have non-residents in blue and residents in brown. I remind you that we discussed turkey permit prices. We are comparing our spring turkey permit cost for an adult hunter with the price it actually takes to hunt a turkey in another state. Now, in contrast with firearm deer permit prices, the cost of a non-resident spring turkey permit in Missouri is more closely aligned with surrounding states and is very close to the average cost of a non-resident turkey permit for surrounding states. The cost of a non-resident spring turkey permit in Missouri has increased from $190 prior to 2020 to $243 as of January 1 of 2025, a more than 22% increase. For this slide, we have Missouri non-resident permit prices in blue and surrounding state average in brown from 2014 to 2024. In recent years, the Commission has increased this permit price to account for the rising cost for putting conservation on the ground in Missouri. The average of surrounding states has increased in recent years as Missouri has increased the non-resident permit price. We are looking at permit-based revenue for residents and non-residents for the last several years. The spring permit revenue is shown on top. In 2024, non-residents accounted for approximately 59% of turkey permit revenue. On the bottom, we have the number of permits purchased between residents and non-residents. In 2024, non-residents accounted for approximately 8% of all turkey permits purchased. Then we look at the number of individual adult spring turkey hunters from 2014 to 2024. With non-residents in brown and residents in blue. Non-residents' participation in spring turkey season has slightly increased over the last 5 years, but remains low compared to resident participation. Overall, non-residents make up approximately 10% of all spring turkey hunters. Additionally, during that same five-year time period, resident participation in spring turkey season has also increased. And with this figure, we are looking at a non-resident percent of total harvest of adult spring turkey permit hunters only. Now, as with deer hunting, while the percentage of non-resident spring turkey hunters remains low, there is a geographic variability in the harvest distribution attributed to non-resident hunters. Portions of northern and southern Missouri, particularly those with the largest tracts of public land, experience a high proportion of non-resident hunters, contributing to overall harvest totals compared to other areas of the state. Now, while with this figure, we are looking at a non-resident percent of total harvest on public land of adult spring turkey hunter permit holders only. We see substantial geographic variability in harvest distribution attributed to non-resident hunters. Southern Missouri and some areas of northern Missouri experience a higher proportion of non-resident hunters contributing to overall harvest totals compared to the other areas of the state. That southern portion of the state is where we have more public land, such as Mark Twain National Forest and our various conservation areas. And then with this figure, we are looking at non-resident percent of the total harvest on private land of adult spring turkey permit hunters only. We see a noticeable change from the public land figure with a decrease in those counties with greater than 50% of the harvest attributed to non-residents. Northern Missouri and some areas of southern Missouri experience a higher proportion of non-resident hunters contributing to overall harvest totals compared to other areas of the state on private land. So when we examine proportion of harvest between residents and non-residents by week, residents account for 89% of the harvest in week 1, and then with the percentage decreasing from that first week in week 2 and 3. Just as a reminder that during week 1, a hunter may only harvest one bird for their 2-bird bag limit. However, in week 2 and 3, they may harvest both birds for a 2-bird bag limit. And then comparing to other states, when we're looking at methods for allocating spring turkey hunting opportunity in other states, it varies by state and includes the use of drawing, quota system, or over-the-counter permits. The approach to allocating non-resident hunters opportunity also varies across states and includes unlimited opportunity and hunter number caps. The proportion of the state harvest attributed to non-resident also varies across states. In 2018, on a postseason resident hunter survey, MDC began asking turkey hunters the level of importance of certain factors related to their hunting season. These factors and their respective level of importance can be seen in the following figure. 77% of respondents indicated that hearing a turkey was very important, and 42% responded that not seeing other hunters was very important. Additionally, MDC also asked resident hunters how much of a problem did they have with interference from other hunters. Now, I point out that interference, there's no distinction if it was a resident or non-resident from that interference. Consistently, greater than 80% of respondents reported they had very little to no problem with interference from other hunters. So moving into waterfowl. MDC provides waterfowl hunting opportunities by draw across 15 intensively managed wetlands. In Missouri, a hunter must have a small game hunting permit, migratory game bird permit, and a federal duck stamp. MDC provides a reservation draw system for resident waterfowl hunters only. A proportion of daily available hunting spots on these intensively managed wetlands are allocated through this system. Those spots not filled through the reservation are added to the daily draw, affectionately termed the pour line. Please note, if a reservation holder does not show up at the daily draw, those spots are also allocated during the pour line draw. Now, looking at non-resident participation across all of our waterfowl areas for 2019 to 2023, of those successfully drawn hunters from the pour line, those parties made up of all residents accounted for greater than 80% of parties. Groups that had all non-residents or at least one resident accounted for less than 20% of parties. And then looking at annual non-resident participation in waterfowl draws by area, averaging across 2019 to 2023, successfully drawn hunters from the pour line, those parties made up of all residents accounted for greater than 75% of parties, and groups that had all non-residents or at least one resident accounted for less than 20% of parties. Now, this table provides an estimate of the number of individual waterfowl and other migratory bird hunters. Those hunters who purchased a migratory bird permit and a federal duck stamp are assumed to be waterfowl hunters. Those individuals who purchase a migratory bird permit without a federal duck stamp are assumed to hunt other migratory birds, not including waterfowl. That being said, the estimate of waterfowl hunters may be slightly low, and consequently, the estimate of other migratory bird hunters may be slightly inflated due to the fact a person may purchase a federal duck stamp in any state. Non-residents accounted for an estimated 11% of waterfowl hunters and an estimated 25% of those who hunt other migratory birds, excluding waterfowl. So moving into overall economic data. Based on a draft report, the 2022 Economic Impact of Fishing, Hunting, and Wildlife Associated Recreation in Missouri, resident hunters contributed to approximately $1.2 billion to the Missouri economy, and non-resident hunters contributed approximately $27.6 million to the Missouri economy for big game. Now, there's a distinction with that. The difference is for non-resident big game numbers, since they cannot be part of the draw for elk and bear, those numbers do not include those animals or species. And then, using those estimates of 2022 estimated numbers, MDC utilized the proportion of non-resident harvest, which includes farms, any deer, and spring turkey, by county to estimate the economic impact of non-resident hunters at the county level. In doing so, we can see the likely geographic variability. Sorry. I did go right there. Sorry, I was wrong. Thought I was on the wrong one. Hunters, by county to estimate the economic impact of non-resident hunters at the county level. In doing so, we can see the likely geographic variability in economic impacts of non-resident hunters at the county level. In this figure, we are displaying permit revenue for residents and non-resident permits from 2021 to 2024. Please note, there was an error in the original title, as this is for both hunting and fishing permits, and not just for hunting. Non-resident permits of all types account for approximately 14% of all permits sold and account for approximately 46% of all revenue generated for permit sales. And with that, we'll transition to Laura for the remainder of the presentation.
Great data, commission?
Yes.
Discussion? Steve?
Wait, I think there's more.
Oh,
She's going to
sorry,
get more.
Laura.
Yeah, no problem, Madam Chair.
I'm just eager to just hop right in.
I'm good with that. We have a couple of slides to help facilitate the conversation and discussion. And as Dr. Anderson mentioned, we utilized kind of an army of team members to pull together this information, given that it covered a variety of different species. And so all of those team members are in the room to help us answer questions associated with that. So we do have staff from permits to help answer questions specific to permits. We have the species specialists in the room to help answer questions for that, statewide resource management and regional resource management that we may be able to call on for waterfowl draw related questions. And then we also have team members from our social science team if we have questions related to public input. So a variety of team members that we can utilize to help answer those questions. In terms of public input opportunity, pulling together all of this information did highlight for us that there may be opportunities to gather additional public input. So we could use the data to gain some insights into non-resident participation and resident preferences related to deer and turkey, but not very many specific questions that help us identify real concerns and what are the primary sources of concerns for both residents or non-residents. And so just putting this out there for discussion that there is potential for opportunity for additional public input on the topic. Additionally, other items that might be pertinent to the discussion. As a reminder, Charles mentioned that non-residents are not eligible for bear or elk permits, so that is restricted to residents only. That application process and permits are restricted to residents only, and for waterfowl reservations at our intensively managed wetlands, those are also restricted to residents only. So non-residents are only eligible to enter those waterfowl drawings through the pour line. We also might think about discussing regulatory complexity associated with different aspects of managing non-resident participation. There could be considerations related to recruitment and retention, reactivation discussions. We also do have non-resident landowners within the state, as well as folks that utilize hunting leases on their properties to allow folks, both residents and non-residents, to hunt on their properties. And then as we've discussed, in previous deer meetings and things like that, we do have that challenge associated with deer management and needing folks to harvest more deer. And then in addition, as we look at this, we've kind of covered some of those real and perceived impacts of non-residents. We've looked at trends over time. We looked at similarities across species and some of those differences. We've looked at the geographic variability associated with harvest distribution. It was very eye-opening when we pulled those maps together just to see the level of geographic variability that occurred for various species. We provided some information on the economic impact of non-resident hunters. And as we discussed that, right, there are those potential topics for non-resident landowners, the additional opportunity for public input. And at this point, honestly, we would open it to any questions that the commission has for the team, any thoughts on this topic, and any directions to staff to review or consider related to this topic in general.
Excellent. Thank you, Laura. Commission, questions?
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I'll start, but I don't want to limit my opportunity to one time, okay? I asked, actually Margie to take a break before this presentation because I figured our discussion would be long.
Yeah.
Okay? And the economic part of it, not that it's unimportant,
Right.
but it's probably the lowest of the priorities for me. You know, if you look at the opportunities for residents in the state that pay sales tax all year long, and I'm not trying to negate the impact that non-residents have, that's not what I'm saying, but there is a difference there.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, but can you go to slide 413 first, please?
Could you tell me what the title of that one is?
It was talking about fee for it was very beginning of the presentation. And actually, if you'll work from there, you can see it
The deer slide?
be almost back at the beginning. I want to just bring your attention to what's happened to adjacent states on fee increases in 2024.
Yeah.
Okay? And I know we had some discussion yesterday on permits. And one of the discrepancies here, when you look at it, and it's consistent with adjacent states, is for you to buy a permit, and it's irregardless of whether it's an adjacent Midwest state or a western state, before you can even have the opportunity to buy that permit, you have to buy a hunting license. Which, I mean, is something we don't ask a non-resident to do
Correct.
in the state. We're discriminated against incredibly, and maybe I don't like that word, but I want to bring that to everybody's attention, because I don't think that's fair to Missouri residents. That's the first thing. The second thing, I want you to go to slide 420, 421, 419, 420, 421, right in there.
I'll let you tell me. They're not numbered up here for me,
okay,
so
I'm sorry.
I'll let you tell me where to stop.
I may have to help you. Keep going, right there, stop there.
Okay.
And what brought this conversation to our attention, where we moved forward on it, had to do with when Nick's presentation, we were looking at the discrimination of how much non-resident hunting, and that was increasing because of non-resident opportunity in adjacent states for turkeys was decreasing. So I'm going to back up just for a moment, because I do have a general question first, which is one I asked you at the beginning. Time frame, if we do implement some changes from a regulatory standpoint, what is the time frame that the commission is looking like, the department is looking like? Because I know this one's going to have to go for public comment.
For sure.
That sort of thing. So as we're moving forward with this, what is our time frame? When does this need to come before us as an action item, is when we're putting things together, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so what we would do is there's a possibility that any change consideration could come before the commission at the May commission meeting, in which case it would be effective in the fall. So initial vote would be in May, final vote would be at the July commission meeting. There is also the possibility, if we did need additional time to gather additional input to go through the regulatory review process, that those items could come to the commission at the mid-year code review, which comes to the commission in August, and those would then be effective in February, but all of the deadlines and final votes would occur with enough time to publish any of those changes, time to make folks aware of any changes. So I think we have a fair bit of flexibility in terms of effective date, that any proposed changes, if we were thinking about changes in effect for, say, spring turkey season, those would be in effect well before turkey season opened for 2026. And then it would be the same thing should we consider any changes for deer season.
But, so that everybody understands here, that as we're working on this, and of course, I wanted to move forward on something for the spring for turkeys last time, and you're aware of that, but we need to be cognizant of the time frame so this doesn't keep getting pushed down
For
the
sure.
road if we're going to make changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so a logistic time frame would be May as an initial vote,
Correct.
so we need to all be aware of that.
Yep.
Okay, because there's a big task here. The thing that I want to bring attention here, because I'm going to tie this together in just a moment. On this graph here, it says non-resident percentage total harvest archery any deer. Now, this is public or private land?
So this is all, this is combined all. So we do
Can you back
have,
up one slide, because I think it's on public land?
yep, so this one is firearm any deer on public land. We don't have a slide for archers any deer on
That's
public
fine.
land, but this one
That's
covers
fine,
public.
You know, because this will make the point that I'm going to make, because I'm going to allude to a couple of things, because I'm going to give a couple of suggestions.
Absolutely.
And they're suggestions at this point.
Yes, yep.
Okay. As you can well see, if you look at it for firearms, any deer, there's a big difference in what's happening in the northern part of the state. Everybody
Yes.
knows why. It's the trophy bucks that's targeted. And what's happening there, you know, folks that draw a tag for Iowa, or if you live in Iowa, you jump across the state and you just buy a tag over the
Yep.
counter. And there's a huge discrimination because Iowa only has 3,600 any deer permits for the whole state, which is pretty amazing because a resident up there can kill 3 bucks.
Right.
So anyway, the point being is that on this chart here, this is total on it, and then flip to the next slide, please. And then it changes whenever you get onto private ground a little bit. But one of the things I want to bring to everybody's attention is when we start looking at public land, because something I'm going to allude to here in a minute, is we have some limitations, Laura, and confirm if this is correct, because we have 2 different types of public land. We have our owned conservation areas.
Correct.
Okay, and then we have federally owned lands.
Correct. And there are other, what we would consider public lands that are often open to hunting. So some county-owned properties would be considered public land in that respect. We also have state parks that in some cases allow for managed deer hunts and city parks. So yes, you are correct. There's our lands, and then there's kind of that other subset of public lands.
Okay. The point I want to make on looking at this slide here is, so if we start saying we're going to make a differentiation, and I'm going to suggest some of my thoughts here as I talk about this. If you go north of the Missouri River, we don't have very much Mark Twain National Forest in the
Correct,
area.
right.
It's usually conservation areas, which we do have the ability to say a non-resident could or could not hunt on that property.
Correct.
Okay, so looking at this, you know, to say we have not as much public conservation areas in northern Missouri, but places like Union Ridge, you know, when we were up there, I mean, it's highly dominated by non-resident hunters during deer season, highly dominated. And that's an area of the state that residents have limited public access, because in our land acquisitions, we've been trying to really focus on that area
Right,
of the
right.
state. So that's the point to be made here, okay? Now, can you move to the turkey slides that are similar to this? And
Absolutely.
I want to say it's 429.
So here is non-resident spring turkey harvest on public lands, and then the next slide would be on private lands.
Okay. If you look at this map, it's completely different than the deer,
Yep.
okay? And, you know, I spent 3 days ago with my conservation agent, and we were doing some other work, but we got to talking on this topic, and this is something I've heard continuously on our public lands for turkeys. It's highly dominated by non-residents, okay? And if you switch to the next side where it's on private land, I believe, okay? The map completely changes.
does, yeah.
It's a completely different map.
Yeah,
And
Arkansas
so,
versus Iowa.
okay, so go back to the previous slide here. And a comment from my conservation agent was, if you think it's an issue people talk about, you need to ride with me during turkey season. He said, I can't even find a resident license plate in Mark Twain National
Wow.
Forest during turkey season. You can't even find one. And the closer you get to Arkansas, it even gets more significant because people are jumping across the border. And, you know, I think Missouri highly values the opportunities we provide for turkey hunters.
For sure.
But of interest on the slide that was presented on turkey hunter interference, that slide, I don't believe it discriminated between whether it was on public or private ground.
Correct. It did not. So that one is a survey of resident hunters, and it's just a general question related to interference. And then, of course, with interference, one wouldn't know whether they were experiencing interference from a resident or non-resident.
And I wanted to point that out, and the reason being is, I won't even hunt on public land for turkeys. I've been shot twice turkey hunting, and they were both on public land. And, you know, in those environments where you're really concentrating hunters or non-residents, it becomes a very uncomfortable environment. But the point being is, that's a little bit of a deceptive slide when it says 85% of the people say we didn't have any interference at all. I think you would get a completely different answer if you specifically knew it was public land, because on my
Right.
private land, I've never had interference.
Right.
But it's because people know that's not an environment to come. So, you know, that's the point I wanted to make there.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, suggestions, and I'm asking questions that I'm asking
Sure.
this, but I think hunter surveys are an important aspect of this. And I think hunter surveys, and not only, if you only ask residents, you're only gonna see one part of the
Right,
question.
right.
And I can appreciate that, okay? But it has to include non-residents.
Okay.
And I'm thinking like a sampling of 10% of the people, of residents, 10% of the
Okay.
non-residents that did it. My thoughts of how to improve the situation is ask a question about northern Missouri
Okay.
for deer, residents, conservation areas only. Okay? I don't think it's appropriate to start getting involved in discriminating on private ground, because that's a private landowner's right
Understood.
on who they let hunt. It's their business, okay? When you go switch to turkeys, the question I would like to see asked, what would be your opinion, if on the whole state of Missouri, conservation-owned lands only, residents only,
Okay.
okay? Also to add to that, in that same discussion, the first week of turkey season,
Okay.
residents only, second week, non-residents.
Okay. And just so I'm clear, for the week split, would you consider that statewide or all lands
I
or
think
just
it'd be
public
statewide. I
lands?
think it's too complicated if you do it. I think you do
Right.
statewide. That would just be, and if anybody has any input, you don't bother to interfere with me on this. And there's some conservation areas that I guess in my mind are a particular concern.
Okay.
That kind of leads to the waterfowl issue.
Okay.
Okay? If you go down to New Madrid, I think there's a conservation area there called Donaldson Point.
Okay.
And that's a unique conservation area in that it's kind of isolated, and it's right on the border where it gets non-residents from Kentucky. And the only reason that's on my mind is, and I don't know all of our conservation areas, but I was down there duck hunting last week, and the residents there said, you can't even hunt there.
Okay.
They said it's 100% non-residents. It said great turkey habitat, great turkey hunting. Matt, you may have attested to that. I don't know when we talked back there. But because that's going to allude to another question, and I'm not as knowledgeable on waterfowl, but I know that there's a chart there on waterfowl, if you'll move to that one, that shows the resident, non-resident domination, that chart right there. A question about this chart, because we have a different type of intensively managed waterfowl areas in the state of Missouri.
Correct.
This would be very interesting to see this chart on only border of the state, like 10 Mile Pond, for instance, that's set right on the border?
Sure. So if we look at this one, so 10 Mile Pond is the hot pink, the one that is all the way to the right in each of those bars. So yes, you can see that compared to Ted Shanks, 10 Mile Pond does have a higher proportion of non-residents that are drawn compared to Ted Shanks. Still right around, I would say probably 10% of the parties that are drawn. But yes, you're correct. And the other aspect of it, we only had the data available at that moment to look at the intensively managed wetlands. And so for some of our other conservation areas, we would not have that specific information for every area related to waterfowl hunting necessarily.
The reason this slide got my attention was, and Matt, where you at, Matt? Okay, I spent some time down there at 10 Mile Pine. I was wanting to see some of the pump stations a couple weeks ago, and they took their Saturday off, and staff spent some time with me. Thanks again. Really very informative. It's super. But, you know, one of the comments we were talking about, he was talking about it in the, I've never used the pull line or port line, whatever you guys call it. But anyway, if I don't have my terminology correct, but he said, and that line is probably more than 50% of non-resident hunters. With this chart doesn't reflect that. So I'm a little confused, and I don't know if you want to give us some input or if you understand, Laura, or
Yeah,
whatever.
so I can attempt, and then I'll definitely tag Kevin and Matt to help with that answer. So when we look at the proportion of spaces that are potentially allocated to non-resident hunters, that's what we're looking at here. So not every non-resident, or anybody for that matter, that's in the pour line necessarily gets drawn either. And so I think in the director's presentation, he talked about the incident we had at Otter Slough Conservation Area, where we had somebody who stood in line for the morning from a different state, didn't get drawn for that conservation area. So when we're looking at this is only those that are drawn. And so for these conservation areas, residents do have the opportunity to allocate, to select a reservation in advance. And if they're drawn for that reservation, then they can go fill that reservation. In the briefing paper that was provided, we do have residents that make reservations and then don't show up to utilize those reservations either. And so in that instance, those reservations go back to the pour line. And so I think what we're potentially seeing here is this doesn't necessarily show the number of spots and the number of folks that may be waiting in line to be allocated for those spots, and then I'll let Kevin and Matt tag in to fix anything that I may have said incorrectly there.
I would say the number that's higher is actually Otter Slough is the other one that's actually higher. The thing to remember about Otter Slough, two things, is Otter Slough's duck season actually starts about 3 weeks ahead of all the surrounding states, so it's in the middle zone. And so its season comes in earlier. I'd be curious and probably anticipate that you see those number of out-of-state hunters come in early while their seasons aren't in, because it's a pretty short drive down Highway 60 to get to Otter Slough from Tennessee, Kentucky. And then as their seasons come in, Arkansas seasons come in late November, that number more likely probably drops. It's also hard for our folks running the draw now, because when they get the green cards, they actually are not seeing whether or not they're residents or non-residents, the way the green card system's set up. So it's a little different than what it used to be in the past. In the past, they used to get everybody's permits, and so they would go through everybody's permits as they came up and draw. So I don't know if that number's changed over time. We've got a lot of different people working those draw systems. And then lastly, I'll just say it's just a testament of the high-quality hunting opportunities that we have in our state, that we're drawing people from all over the place to come, because you can't get a more high-quality waterfowl hunt on some of these areas in these surrounding states. So it's,
Well, and so I clarify on that, if you can't tell, you know, in the draw line if it's a resident or non-resident, how is this information accurate then?
So we have the green cards that they fill out at the intensively managed wetland, and then we tie that back to their actual permit to determine their state of residency to put this information together.
Okay. As our folks running the draw, it's not as easy,
that's
it's identifiable there, but when they do the data, they can figure it out, so yeah. I mean,
Well, and, you know, just to add to what Matt just said, I mean, Missouri's got a pretty incredible waterfowl opportunity.
Absolutely.
Intensely managed wetlands. And, you know, whenever you start looking at states like Illinois that really doesn't have any, so you get a big influx of Illinois
Right.
hunters. And I'm not against non-residents, I just want to make sure it's fair. But then you also look at some of the discrimination, for lack of a better term. I mean, Arkansas just instituted limited access of days to, manage wetland areas.
Right.
And also an increased fee to specifically hunt those, on those.
Yep.
So, I mean, it gets pretty old when you keep seeing that.
Yeah.
And then, and I hate to say that we're gonna be responsive to it, but it's gotta be equitable, is what I'm saying. So, to summarize and to some input from you, we need to understand May's a time frame on initial action. That's the first thing. I think that's really important because it's so easy to just can't get to it. So that's the goal we need to be working towards. The second thing is probably doing 3 surveys,
Okay,
okay? One for deer hunters, unless you can come up with some other suggestions on it, but would be limiting residents to conservation areas in
Okay.
the northern half of the state, and then the other would be fine. But
Okay.
that's where, it seems like that's where the most interest is.
yeah,
On turkeys, first off, resident, non-resident response to first week, residents only, next week's everybody can hunt. The second one is response to residents to conservation areas only. And that would include the conservations that have the draw
Okay.
for them too, okay? And then when you move to waterfowl, basically looking at the peripheral states or something, someone have to give me some help on that. 'Cause
Okay.
I don't understand all of the details on that, Laura.
yeah, and
But the question I have on that, just, and I'll let you answer, is can that survey be generated with information for the commission even possibly by the April, so we could look at that, so that we could start getting some recommendations for May? Is that possible?
we can certainly look into that. So we have the social science team here. I don't want to necessarily commit to anything just because the survey process, developing that, I think we'd need to understand what the timeline would be for vetting the survey. But as we approach that, we can absolutely keep the commission informed as to the progress of that. And if I may, I think what I would ask our teams to do would be to help us think of how those alternatives would play out in a regulatory sense, and if there's other alternatives that we could or should be considering with respect to those suggestions in terms of thinking about code complexity and all of that, so that we could incorporate those within the survey data also. And then I think we'd also, with that social science team, look at what maybe a holistic public input process could be, and understand the timeline associated with that, whether it's just a survey, whether we have an open comment period, what that might look like, because we do get, when we do surveys related to regulations, and they only go to a subset of our hunting public, we do hear from others who would like the opportunity to express their input, and so we always try to balance that opportunity. So I think that's definitely something that we could explore with the team as to what that timeline would look like when we could potentially have some of that information to the commission.
Okay, thank you. And, I mean, I'm sure receptive to this. I would love to see that survey before we go
Okay.
out with it, just so I could kind of, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
that. And, I mean, I'm sorry to dominate the conversation, but I think it's a really important topic for all of us to discuss.
Yes, Ray?
Madam Chair, may I just add a couple of perhaps clarifying comments? First of all, thank you, Steve, for your insight and your suggestions. It's something that I think has been on the minds of a number of us. The
Yes.
seasons, the interplay between non-residents and residents, because it's been brought to light from surrounding states and from just intuitively understanding these numbers. Your surveys, and Steve, let me see if I'm correct on this. You have 2 components that perhaps would be the subject of these surveys or separate surveys. The cost, the relative cost of the licenses for the permits, and hunting license, in fact, whether or not it is required by non-residents. And then the other component are the timelines and for example, in the turkey, the non-resident.
I guess I want to interject a little bit, Ray, there. Asking the questions on the fee structure on the survey, I have no interest in that.
Okay.
I mean, that's a decision for the commission to make. Anytime you ask anybody if it's okay to raise the fees, it's usually going to be no, so it's going to be a generic answer. I'm more interested in what the public thinks about changing the access and the limitations. That's the issue for
Understood.
me personally when I look at it.
Okay.
And making sure that we're being fair as best we can to everyone involved.
Okay. Understood.
But still, the issue of the cost is something to be considered in the course of this discussion for April.
Yeah, but I think it's outside of the survey information. And maybe if you feel different, I mean, that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah. And with respect to conservation lands, areas run by the department here, I think in other states, the regulatory environment of the states may cover federal lands as well and some of these other quasi-public lands. So I think that ought to be looked at and whether that is in fact the case. And with respect to the concept of northern Missouri and treating resident, non-residents for deer hunting purposes differently from southern two-thirds of Missouri, that sounds an awful lot like a whole zoning exercise that's going on in connection with the duck hunting. So that may make it a bit more complicated.
Well, to give you some insight on.
We certainly see the charts
Yeah,
that.
and so everybody has some insight on what I'm thinking is, southern Missouri is dominated by Mark Twain National Forest federal lands. And although actually other states do specifically give access to federal lands, that's a completely different topic. Okay, where we may not have authority, you have to get in, it could be a whole different issue. But a much cleaner issue, and the reason you're not saying, well, for instance, I don't think we can say no non-resident hunting on the Mark Twain National Forest. I don't think that's a reasonable thing to do. It's a public land. On the other side of the coin, it's a cleaner thing when you say conservation areas. That's the reason I did it. And the reason I differentiated between my suggestions, and they're just suggestions, between deer and turkeys, it has to do where the non-resident participation is really getting focused. Non-resident participation with deer is primarily northern Missouri. Okay, and we have limited public access land that we own up there. So, and I use Union Ridge just as an example. I know there's others, but when it comes to turkeys, we have, I think, about 1,100 conservation areas throughout the state that may give opportunities. And I mentioned Donaldson Point because it's a very unique one. It's 5,000 acres sitting over there in a corner. And, so that's the reason I was separating it that way. I mean, I haven't thought through all of that, but that's my thought process.
For sure, and that is definitely something that we can ask the team to think about and understand what the tendrils within the wildlife code could be, what that would mean for communication, all of those different things. We've got a lot of brighter minds than mine that can help us work through that, for sure. Yeah, appreciate the input.
Mark?
On the survey question, and I agree with what Steve is saying, I'm just thinking logistically on that. You're going to ask these questions in relationship to what Steve mentioned earlier about the possibility of limitations on our own public MDC property as far as residents and non-residents. But looking at your slide, other potential factors that you listed, you might want to mix in something about 3Rs or the issues with deer population.
Absolutely.
Or turkey population, so it's not targeted on one particular question. And I know the social science division will do that, so it's a series of questions. And then also, how do we survey non-residents? What's
So
the process?
so we would have their contact information through the permit purchasing process in the same way. And so whether we do a mail survey with follow-up or an email survey, we would have access to that through our permit
They would
system.
have had to have either purchased a permit in the past,
Correct,
be a part of that survey?
correct. That would be the pool of people that we would be looking
So
at. Those
email or
that,
address, okay.
Yep,
So
yep.
you could balance that between resident and non-residents, is that kind of how you do that, or?
That would be my understanding, and Nathan, please feel free to chime in on that. But yes, I think we would have that information accessible to be able to distribute that sample size between both residents and non-residents.
You want something statistically valid when it's all said and
Correct,
done,
yes.
is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I would just point out as another discussion point, and I don't think we've talked about it yet in this discussion, is that we currently do not have a non-resident migratory bird permit. So
Correct.
the creation of one could help us further differentiate our data as well as tracking of usage.
Correct, yes, yes. So currently, there's just a migratory bird permit, and it is the same price for residents and non-residents. So that is definitely something that we could explore.
Okay, excellent. Commission, any other discussion today on this topic?
No, I'm sure there's going to be follow-up discussion outside.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Quite sure.
Yep.
Thanks a lot. That was an excellent presentation. There was
Yes.
a lot of information there, Charles. I mean,
Yeah, thanks, Charles.
tremendous amount.
Thank you, team, also for being here for our questions, so appreciate
Yes,
it.
yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we will transition to finance, and I'd like to invite Melanie Crane, Chief Budget Officer, up to the podium. Oh, why am I not on the slide?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and Director Sumners. I'll be presenting the next item on your agenda, the fiscal year 2025 mid-year review. While presenting the mid-year review report, I will incorporate information from the financial summary for fiscal year 2025 through December 2024 to give you a more thorough look at our financial position. The December 2024 financial summary provides results from the first half of the fiscal year and is the basis for many of the trend assumptions in the mid-year review. Please turn your attention to the fiscal year 2025 mid-year review in your advanced materials. And the purpose of this review is to report the revenue and expenditure trends for the first half of the fiscal year and explain the mid-year adjustments to the original estimates. I will start with the revenue trends. Total revenues for fiscal year 2025 are generally categorized into four main sources. Generally 60% budgeted from the conservation sales tax, 18% from federal reimbursements, 15% from permit sales, and 7% from other revenue sources. Total revenues in 2025 have been trending lower than original projections. The revenue growth through December 2024 was 2.2% below fiscal year 24 and 2.8% below expectations. Following the mid-year review, total revenues are expected to increase 1.7% from the previous year, and revenue trends will be discussed in more detail with each category. The first revenue category is conservation sales tax. For the first half of 2025, conservation sales tax revenues were 1.8% above the first half of fiscal year 24 and 2.5% above original expectations. The original budget for fiscal year 25 assumed a 2.4% increase in sales tax revenue from fiscal year 24 actuals. Sales tax revenues are anticipated to perform slightly below expectations due to an exemption for electricity generators from Senate Bill 872. As a result, the fiscal year 25 mid-year review for sales tax revenue adjusts the revenue growth to 1.9% compared to fiscal year 24. The next revenue category is permit sales. For the first half of fiscal year 25, permit sales were 6% above fiscal year 24 and 3.2% above expectations. Based on current experience, the projected permit sales, the fiscal year 25 mid-year review adjustment to permit sales revenue was annualized at an 8.6 increase to fiscal year 24. Next, we have federal reimbursements. They're the funds that Missouri earns from federal grants for conservation projects and activities. For fiscal year 25 through December 2024, federal reimbursements were 24.1% below reimbursements in fiscal year 24 and 24.2% below expectations. Timing of reimbursements, the delay of several large projects, and a project costing significantly less than the original estimate have impacted the fiscal year 25 federal reimbursements. Based on current experience and projected federal reimbursements through the end of fiscal year 25, The fiscal year 25 mid-year review adjustment to federal reimbursements is expected to decrease 7.9% from fiscal year 24 actuals. And the final revenue category represents the remaining other revenues. Other sources of revenue include sales, rentals, interest, contractual services, donations, and insurance reimbursements. For the first 6 months of fiscal year 25, other revenues were 2.6% below fiscal year 24 and 10.4% below expectations. Growth of other revenues are very volatile based on the variability of timber sales, land sales, equipment sales, interest income, and donations. Based on the decrease estimated in these categories, other income was adjusted at mid-year to 13.1% growth from fiscal year 24. And I'll pause there to see if you have any questions before we move on.
Excellent. Commission, any questions for Melanie?
The only question I had was on permit sales, on that's a revenue base. This isn't a number of permits sold, correct?
Correct.
Just revenue based, okay.
Correct.
Excellent. Proceed.
Expenses.
Total expenditures for fiscal year 25 can be categorized into four main areas. 47% budget from personal services, 35% from expense and equipment, 13% from construction, and 5% from land conservation and partnerships. For fiscal year 25 through December 2024, the total fiscal year-to-date expenditures were 4.1% above the first half of fiscal year 24 and 2.9% below expectations. The department conducted a mid-year review of expenditures to determine the correct level of spending and redirect funds to strategic priorities. From this review for fiscal year 25, a 0.1% decrease is proposed to total expenditures from an original estimate of 8%, resulting in an increase of 7.9% from fiscal year 24. The mid-year adjustments will be discussed in more detail in expenditure categories. The first category is personal services. Those expenditures include salary positions, hourly staff, and the accompanying benefits. For the first half of fiscal year 25, personal service expenditures were 6.9% above the fiscal year 24 amount and in line with the original expectations. Based on current trends reviewed at mid-year, personal service expenditure estimates were increased 0.3% from the original budget estimate for a growth of 10.4% from fiscal year 24. The majority of that adjustment is in benefits. The next expenditure category is expense and equipment. Together, expense and equipment account for 35% of total fiscal year 25 expenditures. For the first half of fiscal year 25, expense and equipment expenditures were combined for 7.3% below fiscal year 24 and 4.3% below expectations. Based on the mid-year review, a 2.6% decrease is proposed for expenditures for expense and equipment for a total reduction of 3% from fiscal year 24. The final expenditure category is for capital improvements. Capital improvements include construction and land conservation and partnerships. For the first half of fiscal year 25, capital expenditures were 16.8% above the fiscal year 24 levels and 6.2% below original expectations. Based on the trends of capital improvements during the mid-year review, a 3.7% increase is proposed for the capital improvements budget from the original estimate. The rate of growth equates to a 22.4% net growth from actual fiscal year 24. The original estimate for capital improvements assumed an 18.7% growth from fiscal year 24. Individually, construction expenditures for the first half of fiscal year 25 were 66.5% above fiscal year 24 and 3.7% above expectations. The mid-year review resulted in a proposed increase to construction of 3.7% from the original estimate. The project details for the construction reductions will be addressed in more detail, probably by the infrastructure management chief's presentation. Land conservation partnerships expenditures for the first half of fiscal year '25 was 71.1% below fiscal year '24 and 52.3% below expectations. Timing of offers and negotiations for projects that meet the department's land conservation criteria, including grants and land acquisitions, resulted in no adjustment in the mid-year review from the original estimate. A summary of the mid-year adjustments has been provided in your fiscal year '25 mid-year report, and this concludes my remarks on the fiscal year '25 mid-year review and financial trends through December 2024. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commission, any question on expenditures or anything else from Melanie? Mark?
On your last slide, Melanie, on capital, I mean, I read that as going here through the end of December, and I'm looking at the 16.8% is a number up from 24 at this time, is that correct? And I'm also looking at the original budget, which had been the fiscal year 24-25 budget, down by 6.2%. So I see a variance there of 23% between those two numbers.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
if you look at what the original budget was in comparison to what the expenditures were in fiscal year '24,
Okay,
we increased the budget significantly in fiscal year '24
Correct.
compared to, or in fiscal year '25,
Okay.
compared to what we had in
Okay.
fiscal year.
yeah, so it's a larger
24,
budget to start
so
with, is what you're saying then?
It's a, yeah, it's basically the difference in the budget.
Okay. And then on our sales tax, I think what's it, 60% of our revenue, sales tax, is that what I remember? Okay,
It's actually 60%, yes.
60%. And do we know how much of our sales tax is paid by residents and how much is paid by non-residents?
I don't know that number. Andrew, do you know that? I don't have that
Well,
information,
you-
but
I
I can
understand you
see if
may
I
not
can
have, I just-
find it.
Curious question.
If it's available, is the
If it's
question.
available, if it's available?
So I don't believe revenue keeps those kind of, because it's you coming up and going to
Point of
fast
sale.
food versus a non-resident. They don't know.
There's no way of telling the difference?
Right.
Okay,
I think that's right.
okay, thank you.
Commission, any other questions for Melanie? Melanie, thank you so much for that mid-year update. Next, we will get a construction update from Jacob, our Infrastructure Management Branch Chief. Welcome, Jacob.
Jacob?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director Sumners. I'm here to highlight some exciting construction activity that's in your advanced materials. So on the first page of your report, under the maintenance and repairs category, on line 6 at Chesapeake Fish Hatchery, I'm happy to report that that construction project is complete. And then on line 7 at Parma Woods Range and Training Center, that roof replacement project, the design is complete and it is in queue for bidding this spring. On lines 8 and 9, the two projects at Bush Memorial Conservation Area at the regional office, those are, if you recall, those were bid in combination under one contract. The main part of that contract, the exterior renovations is 60% complete, and then the wall repairs is 90% complete. Contractor is making very good progress and should be complete very soon. And then on line 15, here at the Conservation Commission headquarters, you probably can't see it from where you're sitting, but there have been many concrete trucks driving in today, and they're pouring parking lot A. Contractor is making good progress despite the weather. The utilities are ahead of schedule. Of course, a little difficult to pour concrete in January, but contractors recovering their schedule. And as of the date of this report, the contractor was approximately 25% complete. On the rehabilitation category, on line 19, the Eagle Bluffs Conservation Area, the pump station flood repairs project, the contract is almost ready to be signed. We just have one item we're working with the contractor to secure, and that's flood insurance, which can be difficult to secure sometimes when we're working right alongside the Missouri River. But we should be able to start the work on that pretty soon, as they get flood insurance resolved. On line 22 at Shell Osage Conservation Area, and also at line 3, those two projects, the Shell Lake renovation and then the wetland renovation, we actually issued notice to proceed on January 30th. Contractor has mobilized equipment, so very exciting to see that project underway. And then on line 24, at Runge, the contractor is about 25% complete. The weather has slowed their progress, but when the weather breaks in the spring, they will be able to get back to replacing the siding. On the second page of your report, under the capital improvements category, on line 3 at Discovery Center, the entrance canopy replacement project is complete. And at Hornersville Swamp on line 4, the road and parking lot improvements project, as of the date of the report, we were working on executing the contract. I'm happy to share that that contract has been signed, and the notice to proceed will be issued on February 19th. On line 7, Columbia Bottom Conservation Area, the entrance road relocation project, as of the date of the report, was 65% complete. They will be wrapping up that project very soon. Then on line 17 at Bennett Spring Fish Hatchery, that large hatchery renovation project is 30% complete. Contractor is making good progress on the distribution piping and the intake structure. They'll be ready to set equipment into that intake structure this spring. So work continues there. A lot of activity on site. On line 18 at J. Thad Ray Memorial Wildlife Area, the Shop Addition project, as of the date of the report, it was 95% complete, but in the last 2 weeks, they have reached substantial completion. So that project is ready for staff to move in. And then on line 19 at Ted Shanks Conservation Area, the hazardous material storage buildings project is 30% complete. Right now, we're waiting for the actual modular hazardous material buildings to be fabricated and delivered on site. And then on line 20 at Apple Creek Conservation Area, the service roads improvements project, the execution of that contract is in progress, and this spring anticipate contractor to start work in earnest. And then on the dashboard for infrastructure asset management at the last commission meeting, Chair, you had asked about what assets were exposed to flood hazard. And so staff worked diligently to intersect our geospatial information for our assets with national data sets available for 100-year floodplains. And so you'll see in the center of the dashboard here that there are 9,391 assets that we have that are in the 100-year floodplain. So those assets represent a replacement cost of almost $1 billion. So it's almost half of the value of the department's infrastructure portfolio that is in that 100-year flood hazard zone. So significant risk that we manage every day. So that concludes my remarks, and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jacob. Yes, we like to do conservation in hard places.
Yes.
It's just the nature of the work we do.
Yes.
Also, I want to thank you and the team for providing the Gantt chart or the project management chart around specifically our intensively managed wetlands and what we have at least on our radar right now. So thank you for that.
welcome.
It's really helpful to the commission.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, any questions for Jacob?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a question, Jacob. First of all, thank you for this. Your team works hard, and they do it quietly and in the face of adverse conditions, and so thanks to them. Trout season is opening on March 1, and there are a number of projects underway at the different fish hatcheries.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see trout season being interrupted or impacted at all by any of the activities going on at places like Bennett, Roaring River, Montauk, Merrimack, with some of the flood cleanups, et cetera?
So that might be a better question for Bruce Drecktraw. I can say that we work very closely to minimize the impacts to the hatchery operations and the fishing experience. Bennett, we have a plan to continue sustaining a stocking operation so that citizens have an opportunity to fish there. Montauk, We're working very hard to repair that facility from all the flood damage. I think that experience won't be what people are accustomed to in recent history, but we're working hard to get the systems up and running, work through the State Emergency Management Agency to get our floodplain development permits and all that work. I know hatchery staff and regional staff are working very hard to make those repairs, and we're working very closely with all of them to get the system back up and running. The other trout parks, they're operating, and I expect that will continue to provide good opportunities for fishermen as they interface with those parks.
Thank you. I think so too. Last year, I know there were concerns with some of the construction going on down in Bennett and some of the other parks, and it seemed to have come off without a hitch, even though there was a lot of behind-the-scenes worry and patches put on places and so on to make it all happen. So your team will rise to the occasion. It is unfortunate about the Mother Nature damage to Montauk and Merrimack, but I'm sure it will continue to come off without a hitch as well. So thanks.
Excellent. Mark, question?
Just looking at your parking lot, good progress. And
Yes.
you probably shared this with us before, but is there any BMPs built into that project at all?
Absolutely, of course.
Refresh
yes.
my memory.
So it's a treatment train concept where we treat we break the whole project down into smaller watersheds, and we treat the stormwater runoff in varying detention basins with vegetated buffer strips and other methods before it gets to the receiving water body downstream. So that's
Thank you. That's kind of what refreshing my memory. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Any other questions for Jacob? Jacob, great report. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are going to shift the order of things a little bit, and I would like to welcome Michael Bill, our Forestry Section Chief, to the podium.
Oh, he's here.
Good morning, Madam Chair of the Commission, Director Sumners. It's my pleasure to present the next agenda item. For your consideration, the department maintains an active forest management program on conservation areas using a variety of practices, including forest thinning, controlled use of fire, tree planting, and the commercial harvest of timber. These management tools are used to enhance the health and diversity of forest and woodland natural communities, which provide multiple benefits to both wildlife and our Missouri citizens. The use of commercial timber harvest helps the department achieve its mission by enhancing terrestrial wildlife habitat, protecting water resources that support aquatic species and recreation, and by sustaining healthy, vigorously growing forests that contribute locally to economies, including forest products and tourism. All these actions contribute to the agency's success in achieving strategic outcome 1.1, Missouri as healthy land, water, and forest. In keeping with established procedures, I have the next action item for your consideration associated with the sale of forest products. The action item is listed as number 13 on your agenda. This is a timber sale on Current River Conservation Area in Shannon County. If approved, this harvest will improve the forest health and long-term sustainability by using an uneven age management treatments, which will replicate a natural woodland structure. This will increase sunlight to the forest floor, which will encourage oak and pine regeneration. This approach will create diverse wildlife habitat as well as increase native grasses and forbs. As such, we request approval to advertise and sell an estimated 2,927,499 board feet of timber located on 733 acres of Compartment 20 of Current River Conservation Area in Shannon County.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
Motion. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael.
So we do have reason to add one action item to our agenda today. New from commission discussion yesterday, we have proposed amendments to our bylaws, an internal document that was first adopted in 2018. Commission, do I have a motion to approve those amendments to our bylaws?
Motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Commission. And as Aaron is just table setting up there, Deputy Director Jeffries, you have the next items on our rearranged but still intact agenda.
That was perfect timing. Madam Chair, if I may, I'd ask Dr. David Thorne to please stand. David recently announced his retirement to the department after 34 wonderful years.
Oh, boy,
He's been
David's
in
leaving.
policy section and has been really a leader for the department. Historian, he's handled all of our national survey work and just been a wonderful guy. I had to look it up, but he actually started February 1st, 1991. I was a senior in high school. So congratulations, David.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me do that. I have a couple realty action items for the commission. Madam Chair, I'm seeking the commission's approval to acquire 153 acres in Cedar County as an addition to the Wakanta Prairie Conservation Area. This is in our Tier 1 priority geography known as the Upper Osage Grassland. This tract will basically close out a 3-sided inholding and will likely be used for a future office site, and the remaining part of the area will be restored to diverse grassland.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, Madam Chair, I'm seeking the commission's approval to acquire 3.28 acres in St. Francis County, close to Farmington, to consolidate 3 current MDC leased offices, shops, and storage facilities into one location.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You just made Regional Administrator Matt Boyer very happy back there.
John Tuttle even applauded too, so.
Last, Madam Chair, I'm seeking Commission's approval to dispose of 9.7 acres known as the Button Rock Access in Shannon County. This will be conducted, if approved by the Commission, by internet auction.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved. Second.
Did you move and second?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, can I hear another second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, or any discussion about this property in Shannon County? You're throwing me for a loop, Commissioner McHenry. All right, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. I do have a short legislative report for the Commission. As Director Summers indicated, we're in the heat of the legislative session. We've had a few bills related to the department that we've been tracking. HJR 56 proposes a constitutional amendment to create a right to hunt, fish, and hunt and fish. This was introduced by Representative Greg Sharp. Right to hunt legislation has been around since the 1990s. Really doesn't do much to help with recruitment or retaining hunters and anglers, doesn't do anything to provide additional access. It's one of those feel-good things, and is the right to hunt or the privilege is well protected within the constitutional authority of the commission that we have. So we'll be watching that one. HJR 43, another constitutional amendment would change the membership of the commission. How vacancies are handled would actually require the General Assembly to vote on any sort of vacancies. Would distribute the sales tax to state parks, and then change how we make property tax payments to counties, which in some cases would be a negative impact to the county. So we're closely tracking that legislation. A couple bills that had hearings this week, House Bill 561. This deals with the placement of game cameras on private property by law enforcement. As the commission is well aware, in 2021, we actually put this in PD guidelines on how this would be handled. We then worked with the General Assembly to codify that in state statute. It has really been the national model on how the placement of game cameras should be placed. The sponsor of the bill actually voted for this in 2021 and now has different feelings towards the legislation. So we testified for informational purposes on that one. Also, House Bill 563 Basically establishes protections for landowners taking wildlife on their own property, would allow them to give away permits to non-resident hunters, and it would do away with our application process for landowner permits, which was implemented in 2020. Prior to 2020, we saw 34% misuse or abuse of the landowner privilege. Since 2020, that has dropped down to less than 5%. So we also testified for informational purposes on that. Some legislation we are interested in is House Bill 1063, introduced by Representative Sassman. This would create an exemption to the Sunshine Law for our Natural Heritage Database, which has a lot to do with private property rights. When there's an endangered species or species of concern on someone's property, someone could get this data and then trespass on private property to gather those species or would do whatever they want to. So that bill was introduced last week, had a hearing last week as well. So we'll be working to move that to the next committee and the next step during the process. We already have a busy week next week, as we will have both our House and Senate appropriation budget presentations. With that, Madam Chair, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Aaron, for that update. Any questions?
Aaron, would you mind introducing TJ if he's in the room?
TJ, yeah.
Great timing.
Yes, Commissioners, I'd like to introduce TJ Gravens. TJ is our new legislative liaison, as you know. Jake Buxton was with us for 5 years, went over to the Department of Natural Resources. TJ was the legislative liaison at the Department of Natural Resources, so we made a trade for a 4th-round pick in cash.
Sounds like a sports move.
Welcome, TJ. Commissioners, any other questions for Aaron?
Yep, good work,
All
Aaron.
right, good
Thanks,
early,
Aaron.
busy legislative season. Okay, Aaron, you have another report for us.
This is working out great how we moved it all around here, so.
Somebody had a really good idea.
Well, that's my last one for the year, probably. So, Commissioners, first off, wonderful presentation by Jason Jensen on partnerships, and this really fits into our next item here related to our potential, or our partnership with the Great Rivers Habitat Alliance. I think we recognize why partnerships are important. They help bring people together, they help advance conservation, and they help us work through tough issues, and this is a great example of a true partnership. Over the last year, the department has been working with the Great Rivers Habitat Alliance on a special project in the Confluence area. There was a unique opportunity to acquire right around 700 acres from a private duck club that was owned by Ducks Unlimited to basically expand youth and mentor hunting opportunities, educational programs in the greater St. Louis area. The property also provides a critical refuge lake in the area that's important for migrating waterfowl throughout the year. Now, in the spirit of Commissioner Wagner, we've been everywhere, man, on this over the last year. It's been quite the roller coaster ride. We had it, we didn't, we had it, kind of bounced around. And I'm happy to say everything has worked out with this partnership, and we're here today to basically recognize the partnership between the department and Great Rivers Habitat Alliance. Through this cooperative agreement, the department is providing $2 million in financial support to Great Rivers Habitat Alliance to help with the acquisition of the property. This is no different than what we've done with Ducks Unlimited or the Missouri Prairie Foundation when they've worked to acquire properties. In addition, the department will work with the Alliance to provide hunting opportunities. This won't be a part of our managed hunt program, but it will also serve as a place for educational programs and habitat workshops. At this time, I would ask Director Sumners and David Bubb, Executive Directors for Great Rivers Habitat Alliance, to come up to sign out the cooperative agreement and the exciting future for this partnership in the St. Louis area.
Excellent.
Any remarks you'd like to make? Sure.
Good afternoon, Madam Commissioner, Director, MDC staff, agents that are in the room. My name is David Bubb, and I am the current president of Great Rivers Habitat Alliance. I want to talk about this, as Director and Deputy Director Jeffries knows, has been quite the roller coaster ride that's been going on over 18 months with the Whistling Winds project. But we truly do believe that this is going to be a unique project and opportunity that will really be a unique project that will be a model for a lot of other states with private and public partnerships in the area. I do, if you will just give me 2 seconds, I do have to admit something that I'm actually a little bit embarrassed about. I am a lifelong hunter and fisherman. I've started, like a lot of people, with their parents hunting and fishing public lands throughout our great state. I've been to this building before, but I have never been to a commission meeting. And sitting here for the last 3 or 4 hours, listening to commissions, directors, the staff, I can tell you, just as an observer, what great people we have in the state running our precious wildlife and wetlands and other lands. I can tell you, just from my observation, we are, as Missourians, are truly in really good hands with you guys. So thank you very much for everything you do. Very quickly, as Deputy Commissioner Jeffries advised and kind of told you about this area, which was known as the Whistling Winds Duck Club, which has been in existence since the 1950s. It is one of the largest and oldest private duck clubs in the state. The amount of waterfowl that use that area, and particularly their refuge, is mind-boggling. There are times, and especially we will see it here in the next few weeks when the spring migration starts, where there will be over 100,000 ducks and geese and other waterfowl that go through that area. Our organization, Great Rivers Habitat Alliance, for those of you who don't know us, we have one goal and one mission, and that is protect, preserve, and educate the public about what is there in what we call the confluence, the area of about 200,000 acres of wetlands, of which over 100,000 that are actively managed by state, federal, and private landowners that through the migration sometimes will have close to 1/2 of the migrating waterfowl that comes through our flyway. It is an absolute critical habitat that must be saved and has been under attack for the last 10 to 15 years by the development of the St. Louis area into the confluence. We have been around for 25 years. This is our 25th year anniversary. And when this opportunity came up a year and a half ago, when Ducks Unlimited was donated this property, and then was let various organizations know that they were actually going to sell it, that we jumped on it, and with the help of these 2 gentlemen, came up with this program whereby the ownership of the property and the management of the property stays in private hands, but we lean on the assistance of your great employees and staff, so we can utilize this not as a private club. It will never be used as a private club again, but will be used for the residents and citizens of Missouri for things like public outreach, for education, hunts for youth, women in the outdoors, veterans groups, educators, first responders, veterans, and the list goes on and on and on. We were very successful. Again, it's been quite the roller coaster ride, but we did successfully purchase the property about 2 months ago. Rumors fly quickly in the waterfowl community, and already we are getting groups such as the Missouri Veterans, Backstoppers, and quite a few others that have heard of what we are doing out there and have approached us about setting up managed hunts for these people and these groups, especially veterans, first responders, which we all know we can't thank enough. So this is a way for us to give back to them. So we are very excited for this opportunity. We think within a couple of years, it will really be a model for the rest of the nation of what can be done in situations like that. So gentlemen, thank you so much. Commissioners, thank you so much, and staff for everything you all have done to make this possible. Thank you so much.
Well, I think David said most of it. You know, I think part of journey for me in this process has been an opportunity to recognize a great partner in a place that historically, not only for the state, but quite honestly for the continent, is an area of high concentration of folks who are super passionate about wetlands and waterfowl. And as we've talked, wetlands and waterfowl hunting opportunities are pretty limited. So this, as it came together, I have to admit, I'm pretty excited about such a unique opportunity that we're going to get to provide. We recognized early on it was pretty limited in scale, and so it wouldn't have the impact in terms of providing massive waterfowl hunting opportunities like some of our intensively managed wetlands do. But this opportunity to provide for youth and mentored and other individuals who don't get these opportunities, especially in the suburban St. Louis area, I'm tremendously excited about it, and tremendously excited about the opportunity to further partner with Great Rivers Habitat Alliance on good conservation work. So appreciate it.
Can I add one more thing just real quick? I apologize.
Go for it.
I'm a lawyer by trade, so this is just the hazards of the job. I do want to mention one other thing. If there are any Ducks Unlimited members in the room, please pull out, I would recommend you pull out your current magazine where the lead article is about your confluence and just what a special place it is in the country and how critical to the habitat it is and what is going on with the urban sprawl that is approaching us from the east that we are constantly battling to keep in its place. Just a little side note. Thank you again.
Madam Chair, any comments you'd like to add?
Commission, if you would like to make any brief comments, I welcome it, but we are in the short rows of this meeting.
I will be very brief. I've heard the word journey. I've heard the word roller coaster. I've heard the word 18 months. I know there was some hesitation early on when this was first brought to us, but we have now a win-win situation, and I think we're pretty proud of that. And I believe, obviously, with the veterans and the youth involved, its proximity to the urban area is critical to this program. And David, you've introduced yourself as an attorney. Thank you. And I will also acknowledge our attorney, Kyle, who is very instrumental in making this happen. So I think I'll thank you both for that.
Thank you, Kyle.
Excellent.
Madam Chair, just a very quick question. First of all, David, congratulations to you. I know we are pleased and honored to have our brand associated with this noble effort of the Great River Habitat Alliance and your efforts to protect the confluence and to create these opportunities for all Missourians and children and first-time conservation enthusiasts and so on. This is a question that perhaps should have been asked of you offline, but there is a significant partner of a non-charitable foundation nature. That is not a confidential. Okay, then I want to make sure we give some credit to the J. Henges Family Foundation, who also played a significant role in the purchase and the contributions of the resources to make this happen. And everybody here will likely know that J. Henges is a former commissioner of the Missouri Conservation Commission, and his memory lives on through this. And so I appreciate the individuals who run that particular foundation, who are also enthusiasts of the confluence and protecting the confluence and so on. So cheers to this quiet partner who helped to make it happen.
Thank you, Commissioner Wagner. Yes, there's no way this ever would have been possible without the generous contributions of the Henges family and trust.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, congratulations on this milestone today, and we look forward to a bright future with another partner. Thank you all. With that, I hereby adjourn.